Chapter 1967. 1967 crushed the skyscraping three. Now the engagement ceremony of the two of us will be held. Yuan Kuei glanced at the embarrassed gods below and said with a faint smile. Since their skyscraping treasured palace had completely allied with the Holy Church, they had to intimidate all the god. As for whether they would unite or not, it was obviously impossible. Rather than joining forces to resist, it would be better to join the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Templar Hall. After they joined forces, the Templar Hall and the Lingxiao treasured palace would be able to intimidate and even restrain all the gods. This intimidation and restraint wouldn't take too long. 4 years were enough. After 4 years, Earth would arrive at their territory, the boundless star field. Hualala. After Yuan Kuei finished speaking, he exchanged a glance with Luke Owen and returned to the 2 seats in the center. He watched this scene with a smile on his face. Behind them, on the left and right sides, there was a row of beautiful women and a row of handsome young men. They walked over with flower baskets in their hands and sprinkled flower petals on the entire ceremonial stage. Squeak, squeak, squeak. In the sky, Pegasus spread their wings and circled around the ceremonial stage. It was as if a scene from a myth had appeared in front of everyone's eyes. As expected of the divine sons and goddesses. Ordinary mortals can't compare to them at all. Regardless of whether they are connected by marriage or not, this scene looks like a real-life immortal couple. Seeing this scene, whether it was the people around them or those who were watching this scene through the satellite, their faces were filled with envy. A real immortal couple. Wait. At this moment, Ji Lingfei suddenly looked at Brown Warren and spoke without any emotion. Huh? Brown Warren was slightly stunned. He looked at Ji Lingfei in astonishment. I have something to attend to. As Ji Lingfei spoke, she walked towards the area below. Junior sister. At the top of the stage, Yuan Kuei saw Ji Lingfei walking towards the area below. His expression changed slightly as he shouted. Ji Lingfei ignored him and walked straight towards Wang Xian. Teacher. She walked to Wang Xian's side and lowered her head as she called out. Yes. Wang Xian nodded his head faintly. Please place this in front of Xiao Ran's tombstone. I'm sorry, teacher. Ji Lingfei said softly as she passed a space ring to Wang Xian. This was a special space ring with a heart shape on it. As for what was inside the space ring, Wang Xian didn't know. No need. You can keep it for yourself. Wang Xian looked at her and smiled faintly. Sorry to trouble you, teacher. Ji Lingfei shook her head and bowed to Wang Xian. Then, she floated the ring in front of him. After that, she turned around and walked towards the ceremonial stage. Wang Xian looked at her and raised his eyebrows. A hint of satisfaction could be seen in his eyes. Hey! What's going on? That goddess seems to know the Dragon King. What's going on? That goddess Ji Lingfei is so familiar. Wasn't she once the vice dean of the Dragon Gate Academy? She has a very good relationship with the disciple of the Dragon King, Xiao Ran. It seems that this goddess has a very close relationship with the assassinated Xiao Ran. Seeing this sudden scene, everyone around had surprised expressions on their faces. Many people even recognized Ji Lingfei's identity. As for the disciples of the Lingxiao Palace, they were all very clear about the intimate relationship between Princess Jiling and Xiao Ran. At this moment, Brown Warren, who was standing on the stage, heard some of the subtle discussions around him. His expression froze for a moment before he slowly became embarrassed. What was going on? What was the meaning of those people's discussions? This was similar to how he felt when he just got engaged and discovered that his fiancée had cuckolded him. This made him extremely angry. He was a god of the Templar Hall. Even if the other party was already a dead person, he looked at Consort Ji with an embarrassed expression. The heat from earlier had completely disappeared. Timpate. On the seat in front of him, Luke Owen saw this scene and gave Yuan Kuei an unhappy snort. Continue. He looked at the embarrassed Brown Warren and immediately transmitted his voice. This marriage alliance represented the alliance between the Holy Church and the Lingxiao treasured palace. Naturally, nothing could go wrong. When Brown Warren heard his voice transmission, his expression changed again. He took a deep breath and looked at Wang Xian. Give me the thing in front of you. Brown Warren stared at the interspatial ring in front of Wang Xian and said coldly. Brown Warren, the auspicious time has arrived. Don't waste any more time. Upon hearing Brown Warren's words, Ji Lingfei's expression changed slightly as she spoke immediately. Shut up. Brown Warren growled in a low voice as he stared coldly at Wang Xian. Give me the interspatial ring in front of you immediately. He spoke coldly to Wang Xian once again. Hiss, this. Seeing the god of the Holy Church shouting at the Dragon King in such a cold manner, everyone around was stunned. They looked at the Dragon King in unison, a god who has only ignited a wisp of divine fire. Pay attention to your tone of voice. Ao Crab saw that Brown Warren, a god who had ignited a wisp of divine fire, dared to speak to the Dragon King in such a tone. He stared at the Dragon King with a cold gaze, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. In an instant, as soon as Ao Crab finished his words, the atmosphere in the entire soaring heavens treasure hall turned solemn. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. On the seats at the front desk, 5 or 6 gods from the Holy Church stood up and stared at Wang Xian coldly. At this moment, everyone's expression changed slightly. Only the surrounding gods were happy to see this scene. If they could fight, they would be even more happy to see it. Yuan Kuei and Luke Owen watched and frowned slightly, showing a hint of impatience on their faces. Yuan Kuei was even more irritated. His eyes were full of displeasure as he glanced at Consort Ji. What, Dragon King? You don't give me this interspatial ring because you don't agree with our marriage? Brown Warren's expression changed slightly when he heard Ao Crab's words, but there was no fear on his face. He raised his head slightly, and his eyes were filled with coldness as he shouted again. This question reverberated throughout the entire Lingxiao treasured palace, and everyone heard it clearly. His words also made everyone's hearts tremble. By now, everyone could already see that Brown Warren's marriage with concubine Ji Ling represented the alliance between the Holy Church and the Lingxiao treasured palace. Once the Dragon King said that he did not agree with their marriage, it also meant that he did not agree with the alliance between the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. If he opposed their alliance, he would naturally become the enemy of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. Brown and Warren were completely threatening and pressuring the Dragon King. Don't cause any more trouble. The marriage is destined. No one can stop it. Yuan Kuei frowned slightly and looked at Wang Xian as he spoke. His voice echoed throughout the entire Lingxiao treasured palace. The marriage was destined. No one could stop it. What he meant was that no one could stop the alliance between the Lingxiao palace and the Holy Church. You, Dragon King, don't cause any more trouble. Give the item to Brown Warren. Teacher, give the item to. I, Xiaoran, don't agree. On the stage, Ji Lingfei didn't expect that her action would cause her teacher to be so passive. Her expression changed drastically as she looked at Wang Xian and spoke immediately. However, before she could finish her sentence, a firm and cold voice resounded throughout the entire world. Chapter 1968. 1968 crushed Ling Xiao 4. I, Xiao Ran, disagree. A voice suddenly sounded from the South Heaven Gate. The voice covered the entire Ling Xiao Palace and everyone could hear it clearly. Everyone on Earth could also hear it clearly because of the live broadcast from the satellite. When they heard this voice, everyone was slightly stunned. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Over 10 million people immediately looked in the direction of the South Heaven Gate. Xiao Ran? Isn't Xiao Ran already dead? How? Xiao Ran was assassinated by the water god of Huangshan. How is he now? Could he still be alive? Surprised voices came from the mouths of some people. Everyone's gaze fell in the direction of the South Heaven Gate. The South Heaven Gate was about 20 kilometers away. With everyone's eyesight, they could see it clearly. It was about the same distance as 100 meters before. Xiao Ran. On the stage, Ji Lingfei heard this voice. Her body trembled, and her face was filled with disbelief. She widened her eyes and stared at the figure outside the South Heaven Gate. It's him, it's him. Xiao Ran is still alive, still alive. When she saw Xiao Ran standing outside the South Heaven Gate, Holding the 8 divine fire pagoda with one hand, Ji Lingfei's eyes instantly turned red, and drops of tears flowed out. She was so happy that she cried. She never thought that Xiao Ran was actually still alive, that Xiao Ran was still alive. It's Xiao Ran, he's actually alive. Our Dean isn't dead, he's still alive. Haha, he's not dead, he must have been saved by the Dragon King. When everyone saw Xiao Ran, who was covered in flames and holding the divine pagoda in his hand, appear in front of everyone, some people were shocked, while others were filled with excitement. How is this possible? I clearly saw Xiao Ran's head with my own eyes. The first divine son of the Lingxiao treasured palace looked at Xiao Ran's figure with a face full of shock and disbelief. Back then, Xiao Ran's head had been thrown into the sea carelessly by him. Who is making a ruckus at the Lingxiao treasured palace's South Heaven Gate? Get lost immediately. At the South Heaven Gate, the 20,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals saw Xiao Ran and the others floating in front of them, and their faces were filled with ice-cold killing intent. Their weapons were aimed at them, filled with a domineering aura. I, Xiao Ran, do not agree to this marriage alliance. Xiao Ran ignored the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals around him as he slowly walked forward. His eyes met with Ji Lingfei's as they flickered with a luster. Those of you who dare to barge into the Lingxiao treasured palace, kill them all. The Southern Skygate commander did not need the orders of the gods from the Lingxiao treasured palace. He stared at Xiao Ran with a face full of killing intent as he ordered loudly. Those who trespass my Lingxiao treasure hall, die. The heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals roared and attacked Xiao Ran and the others with the long spears and halberds in their hands. Roar roar, boys, kill. Ao Chitian saw the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals on his left and right sides, and immediately ordered the 2,000 members of the Demon War Department behind him. Roar roar roar. With a violent roar, the members of the Demon War Department held metal cudgels in their hands and surrounded by demonic chi, instantly facing the 20,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals on both sides. Bang! Ah! In just a moment of collision, the 2,000 demon monkeys' violent attacks landed on the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals at the front. The lowest combat strength of the 2,000 members of the Demon War Department was at the level of a demigod rank 9. Facing the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals below the level of a demigod rank 5, even if the number of opponents was 10 times that of the Demon War Department. However, when the 2,000 demon monkeys from the Demon War Department held the metal rods that were filled with demonic chi and collided with them, miserable screams suddenly sounded. In an instant, the thousands of heavenly soldiers and generals were sent flying backward. They spat out fresh blood and instantly lost their vitality. Hiss, they are going to attack us. What's going on? Are they going to completely become enemies with the Lingxiao treasured palace? Oh my god, in an instant, over 1,000 heavenly soldiers and generals were killed. At this moment, when everyone saw Xiao Ran and the others directly step onto the South Heaven Gate and saw the demon monkeys behind them killing thousands of heavenly soldiers and generals with a single strike, shock appeared on their faces. Directly stepping onto the South Heaven Gate and killing the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, was this declaring war on the Lingxiao treasured palace? Declaring war on them when the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall joined forces. Was this madness or something? Boom. On the ceremonial stage, when the gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace saw the thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals instantly killed, they immediately stood up, their faces revealing a violent killing intent. Their eyes were cold as they stared at Xiao Ran and the others. At this moment, sensing the gazes of the gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace, Xiao Ran raised his head without the slightest fear. His gaze looked at the gods without the slightest fear. Keek. Beside him, the 8-limbed devil Shaw and the others followed indifferently to the left and right. The corners of their mouths curled up slightly as they indifferently swept their gaze over the entire Lingxiao treasured palace. Go to hell! On the right, a heavenly general held a long halberd in his hand. It was filled with the piercing and sharpness of metal as it attacked towards them. Bang! However, at this moment, a rod that was surrounded by demonic chi landed heavily on the head of the heavenly general. In an instant, fresh blood flowed out and a corpse fell heavily to the ground. Kill. We, the 20,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, have nothing to fear from the 2,000 demons. The Southern Skygate commander's expression changed drastically when he saw this scene. He raised the long halberd in his hand and roared loudly as he charged towards the members of the Demon War Department. Join forces. The 20 members of the Demon War Department saw the peak stage demigod-level Southern Skygate commander charging towards them. Their bodies moved and 20 cudgels filled with monstrous demonic flames charged towards him. Bang bang bang! A long halberd pressed down on the 20 cudgels. However, when the Southern Skygate commander saw this scene, his expression changed drastically. How is this possible? All of them are at the level of a demigod level 9th rank. His expression was somewhat shocked, and his pupils constricted slightly, filled with shock. Roar roar roar! A violent sound rang out from the surroundings, and the metal cudgels in the hands of the 20 demon monkeys expanded to 1,000 meters, sweeping towards the Southern Skygate commander in front of them. The 20 members of the Demon War Department were suppressing one of the 5 commanders of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace, Arth. The miserable cries of the people in the surroundings were incessant. At the entrance of the Southern Skygate, 20 figures were following Xiao Ran as they strolled in. Around the ceremonial stage 20 kilometers away, everyone took a deep breath when they saw this scene. 20,000 heavenly soldiers and generals were actually unable to stop those 2,000 or so demon monkeys. Those who followed Xiao Ran seemed to be the Dragon King's subordinates. There are more than 20 of them in total. Could they all be godly state experts? The Dragon King's subordinates followed Xiao Ran and attacked. What are they trying to do? Numerous shocked voices sounded from around them. Even the few million disciples of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace were shocked when they saw this scene. Rumble. A thunderous sound rang out from the center of the ceremonial stage. Yuan Kuei stood there with a scepter that was covered in lightning in his hand. He stared at the South Heaven Gate and slowly landed on Wang Xian. Dragon King, are you going to start a war with our Lingxiao Treasured Palace? A cold and gloomy voice came out of his mouth. Chapter 1969. 1969, Crushing Ling Xiao 5. Hiss. In the Lingxiao Treasured Palace, everyone on Earth was shocked when they saw this scene. They watched as the strongest person in the Lingxiao Treasured Palace stared coldly at the Dragon King with the Judgment Thunderstaff in his hand. Their eyes widened slightly. I'm going to war with you guys. No, I'm not going to war with you guys. Wang Xian looked at Yuan Kuei's gaze. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly and he shook his head lightly. Daddy is too handsome. Drink some tea. At the side, the 2 little girls saw Wang Xian sitting there calmly. They took out a cup of tea from their interspatial ring with smiles on their faces and handed it to him. Hee. Wang Xian smiled and took it. He took a sip gently. When everyone around saw this scene, they took a deep breath. They didn't expect the Dragon King to be so indifferent at this moment. Anyone who dares to offend our Lingxiao Treasured Palace will have to pay a heavy price, no matter who he is. Yuan Kuei's eyes revealed a sinister expression as he stared at Xiao Ran and the others who were walking over. Xiao Ran and the others were not very fast. It took them more than 10 seconds to reach a few thousand meters in front of them. On both sides, the heavenly soldiers and generals who were blocking them were all killed. In just a few minutes, more than 10,000 heavenly soldiers and generals died at the hands of the Demon War Department. At the last moment, none of the heavenly soldiers and generals dared to charge at them. Gods, it's our South Heaven Gate's fault. Seeing that the heavenly soldiers and generals did not dare to attack, the 2,000 Demon War Department members waved the metal rod in their hands and followed Xiao Ran and the others. The commander of the South Heaven Gate led 10,000 heavenly soldiers and generals to surround the back and said to the gods of the Lingxiao Treasure Hall with an ugly expression. Buzz. Xiao Ran and the others stopped in the air and stared at the gods of the Lingxiao Treasure Hall. The atmosphere instantly became heavy. Some of the gods around looked at Xiao Ran and the others in surprise. Xiao Ran, you have cultivated in the Lingxiao Treasure Hall for a few years and are a disciple of the Lingxiao Treasure Hall. Today, you led people into the Lingxiao Treasure Hall and killed the heavenly soldiers and generals. This crime deserves to be executed. Jin Feng stared at Xiao Ran and declared coldly. I came here today to ask the gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace a question. If I am guilty, then I deserve to be executed. Xiao Ran looked at Jin Feng and said coldly, I want to ask, why did the Lingxiao treasured palace want to kill me? Why did they let the two gods of Yellow Mountain assassinate me? If it wasn't for my master saving me, I would already be a dead person. I, Xiao Ran, will naturally kill whoever kills me today. Before the other party could reply, Xiao Ran's gaze swept across all the gods in the Lingxiao treasured palace and questioned. How dare you? You are just a mere mortal. If we wanted to kill you, it would be as easy as squashing an ant. Why go through so much trouble? Jin Feng's face flashed with a hint of anger when he heard his words. He shouted sternly. I don't understand either. Why did you go through so much trouble to get the first divine son of Lingxiao treasured palace to contact the two gods of Huangshan? At this moment, Wang Xian, who was sitting at the side, said calmly, You are slandering me. As soon as he finished his sentence, the first son of deity, who was sitting in front of the disciples of the Lingxiao treasured palace, shouted at Wang Xian with a drastic change in expression. Senior brother. On the ceremonial stage, Ji Lingfei's expression changed drastically when she heard the words of Wang Xian and Xiao Ran. She quickly thought that the person behind all of this must be her senior brother. She had just returned to the Lingxiao treasured palace a few days ago when Xiao Ran was assassinated by two unknown gods. At that time, she did not think too much about it. Now, she understood everything. Ji Lingfei's gaze was fixed on Yuan Kuei, and her eyes were filled with coldness. Humph, since you didn't die last time, then die here today. Yuan Kuei's face revealed a cold killing intent, and he said straightforwardly without concealing it. Even in the face of all the forces of the Dragon King, the Lingxiao treasured palace was not afraid. Moreover, today, the Lingxiao treasured palace had been attacked. No matter what force the other party was, he had to kill them all. Otherwise, where would the dignity of the Lingxiao treasured palace be? Heavenly soldiers and generals. Yuan Kuei roared. Yes. The responses from the east, west, and north heaven gates resounded throughout the Lingxiao treasured palace. Boom, boom, boom. Soon after, the three great gates of heaven, as well as the heavenly soldiers and generals in the central area, flew toward them. They locked onto Xiao Ran and the others with killing intent. Anyone who dares to challenge the dignity of our Lingxiao treasured palace, kill. Yuan Kuei roared with a cold gaze. Kill. The sky-shaking roar caused the entire horizon to change. Senior brother, you. Ji Lingfei's expression changed drastically when she heard her senior brother's order. She immediately flew to Xiao Ran's side and stared at Yuan Kuei, her expression changing. Junior sister, if you dare to betray the Lingxiao treasured palace, I will clean up the sect on behalf of my master. Yuan Kuei stared at Ji Lingfei with a gloomy expression. Lingfei. Xiao Ran looked at Ji Lingfei and called out softly. I'm here. Ji Lingfei raised her head and looked at him. Then, she smiled and stood firmly by his side. Damn it, all of you deserve to die. When Brown Warren saw this scene, he stood on the stage with an embarrassed expression and shouted angrily. Brother Luke Owen, I'm really sorry. We will give you enough compensation for this matter. I hope you won't disrupt our alliance. Yuan Kuei's expression was a little ugly as he said to Luke Owen of the Sacred Hall. For divine artifact. Luke Owen said coldly. All right. Yuan Kuei's expression was gloomy as he gritted his teeth. Our Lingxiao treasured palace will settle the matter in front of US first. Lingxiao treasured palace's gods, get ready. He let out a savage roar. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In an instant, 15 figures rose into the sky and stared at Xiao Ran and the others with murderous intent. The judgment of the gods, anyone who violates the Lingxiao treasure palace will be killed without mercy. Yuan Kuei held the divine weapon of the judgment thunderstaff and roared coldly. This is really going to be a fight. Behind Xiao Ran are all the subordinates of the Dragon King. We know that the number of gods under the Dragon King is not as many as the Lingxiao treasure palace. Don't tell me that there are more than 20 figures behind Xiao Ran who are all godly state experts. How is it possible that all of them are godly state experts? I wonder if the Dragon King will make a move. The Dragon King will make a move. If they really fight it out, I reckon that the experts of the Sacred Hall will make a move. At that time, it will be very difficult for Xiao Ran and the others to escape. Once the Sacred Hall makes a move, Xiao Ran and the others will definitely be judged and punished. This is a little unwise. When everyone saw the anger of the gods in the Lingxiao treasured palace, shock appeared on their faces. Other than the gods, the surrounding people hurriedly retreated into the distance, afraid that they would be affected. Everyone was not optimistic about the arrival of Xiao Ran and the others. After all, today was the day of the alliance between the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Sacred Hall. Once the other party joined forces, there would be close to 30 gods. Everyone on Earth who saw this scene through the satellite also had shocked expressions on their faces. They were shocked by Xiao Ran's courage, but they were even more shocked by the strength of the Lingxiao treasured palace. However, they did not think highly of Xiao Ran and the others. Chapter 1970. 1970 crushed Ling Xiao 6. Kill without mercy. 90,000 heavenly troops completely surrounded the group of people at the south heavenly gate of the Ling Xiao treasure palace. Then, they let out a wild roar. Clang, clang, clang. They raised the weapons in their hands, and their bodies were filled with killing intent. Weapons appeared in the hands of the gods of the Ling Xiao treasure palace, and they coldly scanned the area in front of them. Hehe, it seems that you have admitted to assassinating me back then. Xiao Ran coldly stared at the gods of the Ling Xiao treasured palace as a terrifying killing intent shot out from his eyes. Today, I will take your dog head and purify your filthy body. On the ceremonial stage, Brown Warren's face was filled with killing intent as he stared at Xiao Ran and Ji Lingfei. What happened today was a great humiliation to him. He wanted them to pay a heavy price. Hehe, Ling Xiao treasured palace, when you dare to kill our Dragon King's disciple and offend him, we are already prepared to crush you, Ling Xiao. Prime Minister Gui heard their words and swept his gaze across all the gods in the Ling Xiao treasured palace as he said indifferently. Roar roar, God Ascension roll? You dare to place our Dragon King on the God Ascension roll? You are not qualified. My sons, follow me today and crush Ling Xiao. Roar roar roar. Ao Chitian's sea-pacifying needle smashed toward the God Ascension roll, and his body grew a few hundred meters in size. Blood-red chains were tied around the sea-pacifying needle. Those who enter our God Ascension roll must be bound by us. Otherwise, they will die. A middle-aged man saw Ao Chitian's attack toward the God Ascension roll, and a cold expression appeared on his face. His body shook, and he transformed into a 1,000-meter-tall figure. His earthen yellow armor covered his entire body. A 1,000-meter-tall shield appeared in his hand, and he smashed it towards the sea-pacifying divine needle. With just you. Ao Chitian's eyes were filled with fury as he looked at the god who had ignited 3 wisps of divine fire. His palm trembled, and blood-red chains shot towards his shield. Bang, bang, bang. A huge collision sound caused the entire shield to fly backwards. The sea-pacifying divine needle smashed heavily onto the God Ascension roll. Rumble. A collision sound that seemed to originate from the 9 heavens caused the entire God Ascension roll to emit a loud bang. Cracks slowly appeared on it. Ka, 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 Ka. Following that, the cracks slowly grew bigger and eventually collapse. Hiss. They're fighting. The prelude to the war is about to start. They're really fighting. Seeing the Dragon King's underlings suddenly attack, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that the violent demon monkey would be so violent. Roar. Roar. Kill. The bodies of the 2,000 members of the Demon War Department shook, and waves of darkness spread to the surroundings. Their blood-red eyes were filled with scales, and they held tightly onto the metal rods in their hands as they swept towards the 90,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals in the surroundings. It was violent and bloody, and it was completely exposed. Kill them. The 90,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals of the Soaring Heavens Treasure Palace revealed an icy aura on their faces as they roared loudly. The densely packed attacks instantly covered the 2,000 members of the Demon War Department. I will purify you. Brown Warren stared at Xiao Ran with a ferocious gaze. A scepter of light appeared in his hand and he directly attacked Xiao Ran. Be careful. Ji Lingfei, who was at the side, saw his attack and immediately prepared to go up to meet it. With just you. However, at this moment, Xiao Ran's cold voice sounded. He extended his hand to stop Ji Lingfei. The divine fire above his head slowly rose up, and the aura of an attribute god was emitted from his body. With a wave of the 8 divine fire pagoda in his hand, countless flames from the first level directly burned towards the light in front of him. What? You lit the divine fire. Hiss, Xiao Ran actually lit the divine fire. Could it be that Xiao Ran was the one who lit the divine fire and became a god in Jiang City a few days ago? Is Xiao Ran the first native to light the divine fire on our earth? The Dragon King doesn't even seem to have lit the divine fire. Everyone revealed shocked expressions as they sensed Xiao Ran's terrifying pressure. Even the gods in the Lingxiao Treasure Hall had a trace of shock flash across their faces. Back then, when Xiao Ran was in the Lingxiao Treasure Hall, he was only at the profound void tier. However, in less than a year, he had ignited a divine flame. Just what kind of opportunity did he obtain with this terrifying increase in strength? Kill all the gods in the sky. Ba and Mo Sho looked at each other. With a wave of their arms, black clouds gathered in the sky. Drip, drip, drip. In an instant, drops of blood-red rain fell from the sky. Those who provoke the might of the Dragon King, die. Those who provoke the might of the Dragon King, die. Voices came from the mouths of Prime Minister Gui, Ao Jian, and Ao Xingmu. Each of them growled and locked onto a god from the Lingxiao treasured palace and attacked. Kill them. Yuan Kuei saw more than a dozen gods attacking them, and he shouted angrily. Your strength seems to be insufficient. When the leaders of the Dragon Palace attacked the gods from the Lingxiao treasured palace one by one. At the last moment, the 9 flood dragons stood there and scanned their surroundings. Roar. Boom. 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 Another 9 dragon roars resounded throughout the world. The 9 flood dragons had completely transformed into over 2,000 meters in size. They were only one step away from fully evolving into wind divine dragons. However, even so, they were now able to fight and even kill a god of divine fire. 9 dragon roars resounded throughout the world. Roar roar. They let out a wild roar. Countless wind blades covered an area of 500 to 600 kilometers and attacked the back of the Lingxiao treasured palace from all directions. The terrifying attack was completely aimed at destroying the entire Lingxiao treasured palace. Hiss. Damn, all of them are gods. The 22 figures beside Xiao Ran are all gods. Including Xiao Ran, there are a total of 23 figures. My god, are these all the subordinates of the Dragon King? The Dragon King hasn't made a move yet. The subordinate beside him and his 2 daughters are all gods. So, including Goddess Ji Lingfei and Xiao Ran, there are a total of 28 godly state expert. When the subordinates of the Dragon King attacked the gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace one by one, and when the last 9 flood dragons roared, everyone was shocked. Even the gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace could clearly sense that the last few figures didn't ignite the divine fire. But why did they have such terrifying power? They didn't understand. At this moment, Xiao Ran's group of 24 gods was fighting against the 15 gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace. In terms of numbers, they were completely crushed. At this moment, everyone didn't look in the direction of the battlefield. Instead, they all looked at the Dragon King, who was sitting there leisurely drinking tea. 28 gods, a total of 28 gods. Dragon King. Is this going against the heavens? Chapter 1971. 1971 Dragon Palace vs Lingxiao Sacred Hall. Gulp. In the surrounding area, a group of gods who were sitting on chairs stood up with solemn expressions. They swept their eyes over the Dragon King's 20 or so subordinates and took a deep breath. Just now, they had faced the alliance between Lingxiao Sacred Hall and the Sacred Hall, faced the light of the Sacred Hall, and faced the God Ascension list without saying anything. It was because they were afraid of the power of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. A total of 29 gods were not something they could resist. However, the Dragon King's power now had 28 godly state experts. That goddess Ji Lingfei had turned to the Dragon King's side, which represented the Dragon King's 28 gods versus the Lingxiao Holy Church's 28 god. One Dragon King had the power to resist the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church. How could this not shock the gods? The most powerful force on earth was actually the Dragon King. How could they not be shocked? 28 godly state experts. Oh no, how is this possible? When Yuan Kuei saw the Dragon King's over 20 godly state experts wreaking havoc, his expression also changed drastically. Brother Luke Owen, please send reinforcements to the Holy Church. Yuan Kuei hurriedly shouted at Luke Owen. His gaze swept past the three people who were dozens of meters tall, and the Thorn Ao Xingmu and the others who were floating beneath him. A trace of fear appeared on his face. More than 20 gods. It's indeed a little troublesome. Luke Owen heard the Lingxiao Treasured Palace's plea for help, and when he saw Xiao Ran and the others, his expression was also filled with a grave expression. However, that Dragon King, do you really want to make an enemy out of our Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church? He stared at Wang Xian and questioned him coldly. Facing the more than 20 gods in front of him, he did not show the slightest fear. The Lingxiao Treasured Palace dared to kill my Wang Xian's disciples. They are destined to be destroyed. If your Holy Church helps them, then let's fight. Wang Xian leaned back on his chair and watched this scene with a smile on his face. Ha ha ha, your Dragon King really thinks that we can't kill you all. Yuan Kuei, today, we will completely eliminate them. The light of the Holy Church, the might of Lingxiao, envelops the entire earth. Today, we will use your Dragon King as an example to let everyone know the consequences of provoking us. Luke Owen laughed loudly, the milky white power of light on his body turning somewhat pale. Countless rays of light illuminated the entire sky. Above his head, wisps of divine fire slowly appeared. The gods of the Holy Church, make your move and destroy them. Luke Owen ordered loudly, wisps of divine fire appearing above his head. Soon, 5 wisps of divine fire appeared. Haha, good, good. Then let's make an example of the Dragon King today. Anyone who dares to touch the might of our Lingxiao Sacred Hall will die. Today, I will make all the gods wail in the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. Yuan Kuei's body also trembled violently. The lightning on his body flashed violently, and the 5 wisps of divine fire above his head flickered slightly. 5 wisps of divine fire. The strongest person in the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Sacred Hall has already ignited 5 wisps of divine fire. The expressions of the gods around the stage changed slightly when they saw the 5 wisps of divine fire above Yuan Kuei and Luke Owen's head. They were all gods who had just lit their divine fires not too long ago. Even though they had lit 7 or 8 wisps of divine fire when they were alive and now that they had regained their strength, they were still no match for the gods who had lit 5 wisps of divine fire. Even the Son of Heaven of the True Dragon Order's pupils constricted slightly. If they wanted to have the strength to fight against a god with 5 wisps of divine fire, they would need at least a dozen years, or even hundreds or even thousands of years. If they were unlucky, they might even need tens of thousands of years to recover to such strength. The strongest combat strength of the Dragon King's subordinates are the 3 plant-type creatures. They are almost able to fight against a god with 4 wisps of divine fire, but they are definitely no match for Yuan Kuei and Luke Owen. The eyes of some gods flickered as they watched. In the divine realm, it was not as difficult as fighting against those below the divine realm. If one had a powerful divine artifact and a powerful divine kingdom, they would also be able to fight against those below the divine realm. However, in the eyes of ordinary gods, only a dozen or so gods with 1 wisp of divine fire working together could defeat 2 gods with 2 wisps of divine fire. Currently, there were 2 gods with 5 wisps of divine fire in the skyscraping treasured palace and the Holy Church. If the Dragon King's subordinates did not have experts to deal with them, they would probably be finished. Boom, 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 boom. As soon as Yuan Kuei and Luke Owen finished speaking, an area of more than 1,000 kilometers in the sky was completely covered by lightning and light. The terrifying pressure completely caused the entire world to change color. Hiss. This scene is so terrifying. 2 gods with 5 wisps of divine fire. Not good. The Dragon King's top-tier combat strength is probably finished. If the Dragon King doesn't have a god with 5 wisps of divine fire to deal with him, the Dragon King will be finished today. Everyone around, as well as the billions of people who were watching the scene through the satellite, also had shocked expressions on their faces when they saw this scene. They were also aware of the huge gap between gods. While they were shocked by the Dragon King's power, they were also shocked by the power of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Sacred Hall. After all, the foundation of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church was placed here. Ka, 2 gods with 5 wisps of divine fire want to destroy us? In that case, the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church prepare to wail. Seeing the imposing manner displayed by Yuan Kuei and Lu Koan, the Ao crab, who had been standing beside Wang Xian, slowly flew up into the sky. His body shook and turned into an extremely ferocious crab with 2 pincers and 8 sharp claws. It was covered in dark yellow scales. His body was over 10,000 meters long, and he exuded darkness and ferociousness. At this moment, the Ao crab was like an evil giant beast in the starry sky, directly attacking Yuan Kuei and Lu Koan. What? Didn't this crab only have the strength of 2 wisps of divine fire? Yuan Kuei saw the Ao crab that suddenly appeared, felt the terrifying aura, and his expression changed drastically. Ka. Ao crab let out a strange cry and earth peaks floated around him out of thin air. Each earth peak was 1,000 meters tall, and its cultivation level had reached 300 to 400 meters. More than a dozen mountain peaks floated in the air. This scene made everyone below look shocked. The Dragon King actually has such a terrifying subordinate. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but gasp, their faces filled with shock. Damn it! Lu Koan felt Ao Xie's strength, and a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. He had never thought that his opponent would have the strength to fight against 5 wisps of God. How did the Dragon King have so many powerful subordinates? Let's begin. This is the strongest strength of our Dragon Palace. I would like to see whether your Lingxiao Treasured Palace is stronger or our Dragon Palace is stronger. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled when he saw this scene. Anyone who made an enemy of the Dragon Palace would have to pay a heavy price. Chapter 1972. 1972 Dragon Palace vs. Lingxiao Holy Church. Dragon Palace. Everyone was in a daze when they heard the name Wang Xian. Was this the name of the Dragon King's faction? The Dragon Palace, which had more than 20 godly state experts. Roar, 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 kill. Ao Chitian held the ocean-pacifying divine needle in his hand and let out a furious roar. Then, he smashed it towards the 1,000-meter-long god who was covered by the earthen yellow armor. Boom! An earth-shaking collision occurred, and the shockwave spread out in all directions. A huge airwave could be seen with the naked eye. Get down! Get down! Below, more than 10 million cultivators below the godly state quickly laid down on the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. The battle between more than 50 godly state experts was completely destructive. Ah! 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 At this moment, a series of miserable screams sounded in the surroundings. When everyone looked over, their pupils constricted slightly, and their faces were filled with shock. Those 2,000 demon monkeys are terrifying. Their strength is no less than a demigod rank 9. A shocking voice came from a divine son of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. 2,000 members of the Demon War Department fought against 90,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. However, there were only 500 to 600 of these 90,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals who had reached the demigod rank 9. The rest were all below the demigod rank 9. As the saying went, more ants could kill an elephant. However, the 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals in the Lingxiao Treasured Palace were obviously not at the level where more ants could kill an elephant. In just a few minutes, more than 10,000 heavenly soldiers and generals died at the hands of the Demon Combat Division. Holy warriors, attack! Lu Koan heard the screams from below. He glanced at them and immediately ordered the 40,000 to 50,000 holy warriors. Holy warriors, an army that was comparable to the heavenly soldiers and generals of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. Kill this beast as soon as possible. Yuan Kuei's gaze swept over the terrifying battles in the surroundings as he roared with a solemn expression. Below, Ao Xingmu and the two experts from the Starwood Combat Division brandished countless thorns and swept through the buildings of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace, smashing them directly towards the gods. Before their arrival, the two forces had only ignited 4 wisps of divine fire. Now that they had arrived on Earth and achieved a breakthrough, they had only ignited the 5th wisp of divine fire. Among the other gods, only 2 had ignited 4 wisps of divine fire. The Dragon King was stronger than them. Now, they could only kill this crab as soon as possible. Otherwise, their Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church might suffer heavy losses. Kill. Luke Owen also realized the severity of the problem. He gripped the divine artifact in his hand tightly. A 1,000-meter-wide ball of lightning and a long spear of light shot toward Ao Crab. Bang! 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 Ao Crab saw their attack and waved his sharp claws. The surrounding 10 or so huge mountains charged toward the long spear and ball of lightning. Boom! A terrifying shockwave rang out in the sky. Their battle had already left the atmosphere. It could be said that their battle had already reached the starry skies. Ka. Ao Sha blocked their attack, and with a move, his huge body charged towards Luke Owen. God of Light, praise. Luke Owen held the divine staff in his hand and waved it in front of him. A war god of light with wings condensed from the power of light appeared in the starry sky. The war god of light's body was over 100 kilometers in size. He had enormous wings and held the scepter of light in his hand as he attacked Ao Crab. Star Judgment. Yuan Kuei held the lightning judgment staff in his hand. Bolts of lightning covered the void, and the bolts of lightning seemed to tear the entire starry sky apart. The bolts of lightning fused together and became several thousand meters thick, striking at Ao Crab. Crack, crack, crack. Ao Crab raised 2 pincers that were several thousand meters in size. They emitted an earthy yellow glow, and amidst the earthy yellow, there were many black spots. It looked somewhat terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. Ao Crab used his physical body to meet their attacks. Crackle, crackle. The 1,000-meter-thick lightning bolt was broken by his pincers. The 100-kilometer-long light warrior's arms were torn apart by his claws. Ao Crab was like a space beast. His body contained a terrifying and heavy aura as he continued to attack Luke Owen and Yuan Kuei. What? Yuan Kuei and Luke Owen's pupils constricted slightly when they saw Ao Crab easily break their attack. Shock appeared on their faces. Ka. Rumble. At this moment, an extremely powerful Earth attribute energy shot out from Ao Crab's body. Earth walls appeared out of thin air in the surrounding void. The incomparably thick earth walls completely enveloped Yuan Kuei and Luke Owen. The coverage area reached nearly 200 kilometers. Ao Crab's figure flashed and appeared on the earth walls behind them. Oh no! Luke Owen and Yuan Kuei's expressions changed drastically as they hurriedly dodged to the side. The God of Light and the bolts of lightning were heading towards Ao Crab. Boom 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 boom. Ao Crab's 2 pincers were raised high. The surrounding earthen yellow energy actually completely covered the God of Light and the bolts of lightning that were 100 kilometers away. Boom. He waved his pincers, and the lightning and light warlord that were wrapped in soil directly smashed towards Luke Owen and Yuan Kuei. How is this possible? At this moment, the expressions of the 2 people finally changed drastically. Each of their attacks could be easily blocked and resolved by the other party, which caused their hearts to be extremely shocked. This crab's strength was much stronger than theirs. Dodge, dodge. The 2 people's expressions changed greatly, and they hurriedly dodged to the side. Boom, boom. However, the light war god that was over 100 kilometers covered and the incomparably terrifying bolts of lightning smashed down on the Lingxiao Treasured Palace below. When the terrifying attack landed on the Lingxiao Treasured Palace, a loud bang sounded out. The entire Lingxiao Treasured Palace began to tremble violently, and an incomparably large crack appeared directly. Oh my god, what a terrifying battle! A whole dozens of kilometers wide was punched out of the Lingxiao Palace. Hiss, this is complete destruction. That Dragon King's subordinate is so powerful. He could completely suppress the strongest person in the Lingxiao Palace and the Holy Church alone. He covered an area of hundreds of kilometers in one move. If this was a battle on Earth, the entire Earth would be destroyed, right? This attack can be compared to a nuclear bomb, right? This is simply too terrifying. The Lingxiao treasured palace has actually been destroyed. One after another, shocking sounds rang out from the Lingxiao treasured palace. The disciples of the Lingxiao treasured palace watched this scene in shock. They had never thought that there would actually be a day where someone would be able to attack their Lingxiao treasured palace. Moreover, they had broken through such a huge crack in the Lingxiao palace. No, no. At this moment, a god's scream came from the sky. Chapter 1973. 1973 Dragon Palace vs. Lingxiao Sacred Hall. No. In the sky above Lingxiao Sacred Hall, a middle-aged immortal god looked at his body in despair. At this moment, his head was completely separated from his body. His head was covered by the dark energy, and his body was covered by the light energy. One light and one dark, looking extremely strange. His face was filled with despair, and his life force was quickly disappearing. In the sky above him, Ao Yarrow, who was half dark and half light, stared coldly at the falling figure, his eyes filled with a cold luster. Slowly, Ao Yarrow's figure disappeared, as if he had never come to this world. Bang! Bang! His head and body landed on the top of the Lingxiao treasured palace, as if they had hit everyone's heart. It's Miao Shen. Miao Shen has actually fallen. Gulp. Miao Shen seems to have ignited 2 wisps of divine fire. I didn't expect him to actually die. Around the Lingxiao palace, all the disciples looked at the falling bodies with shock on their faces. Their faces were filled with shock. Woo woo woo. Hualala. The entire sky let out a mournful cry because of the fall of a god, and drops of rain fell from the sky. The torrential rain suddenly covered an area of over 10,000 kilometers. The first god had fallen. The first god of the Lingxiao treasured palace has fallen. That subordinate of the Dragon King is so terrifying. He's always hidden in the void and can't be seen at all. He can deliver a fatal blow at any time. Those 3 plant-type god creatures are even more terrifying. Those thorns easily cut off the arms of the 4 wisps of the divine fire god. It's too terrifying. Under such circumstances, the Dragon King and his 2 daughters haven't made a move yet. If they did, the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall wouldn't be their match at all. The death of a Lingxiao treasured palace god shocked everyone. Whether it was the people watching through the satellite or the people in the Lingxiao treasured palace, they all widened their eyes. No one had expected that under the joint efforts of the Templar Hall and the Lingxiao treasured palace, the Dragon King's subordinates could still contend with them and even kill a god from the Lingxiao treasured palace. This was even when the 3 gods on the Dragon King's side had not made a move. If they did. Boom. 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 When the gods from the Templar Hall and the Lingxiao treasured palace saw that their companions had died, their expressions changed drastically. Their bodies shook, and huge god kingdoms appeared in their god kingdoms. Vast god kingdoms stood in the void, and in an instant, there were more than 20 god kingdoms. This scene was extremely shocking. In the Lingxiao treasured palace, everyone was kneeling on the ground under the pressure of the god kingdoms. The terrifying pressure made them unable to stand up. Are we going to be serious? He. The godly state experts of the Dragon Palace revealed a ghastly expression when they saw this scene. Their bodies also trembled as dragon acupuncture points appeared behind them. There were 28 gods in the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall, and 12 of them had only lit a wisp of divine fire. As for the Dragon Palace, apart from the 9 flood dragons, the rest could fight against 2 wisps of divine fire gods. In terms of overall strength, the Dragon Palace completely suppressed the gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall. The battle only lasted for 5 minutes before the gods of the sacred hall and the Lingxiao treasured palace realized the power of the Dragon Palace. However, it was already too late. Roar, roar, roar. At the side of the Lingxiao treasured palace, more than 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals and holy warriors were besieging the 2,000 members of the Demon War Department. Furious roars came from the center, and bodies were sent flying from time to time. Some unlucky people were hit by these bodies and died immediately. However, The addition of 40,000 to 50,000 holy warriors still put a lot of pressure on the 2,000 members of the Demon War Department. 2,000 heavenly generals against the strongest legion of the Lingxiao treasured palace, plus 50,000 holy warriors, hiss. Not only are the godly state experts of the Dragon Palace powerful, but also the 2,000 terrifying demon monkeys. Just now, the two forces joined forces and wanted to suppress all the gods. I didn't expect that the Dragon King's subordinates could suppress the two forces. Some people looked at the battle in the Lingxiao treasured palace and gasped. Hidden strength. Godly state experts. An all-round suppression. Brother Daddy, why do you have so many powerful subordinates? Hua Asir looked at the battle in the sky and the surroundings. She was also looking at Wang Xian in shock. Her small face was filled with astonishment. Your father is your father. Your father is very powerful, Wang Xian said with a smile. In the current situation, with the top-notch combat strength, the Dragon Palace had completely suppressed the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. The Dragon Palace would not lose this battle. Little girl, lend me your star grass. Wang Xian stretched out his hand and grabbed the star grass on Hua Asir's head. Then, he waved it toward the heavenly troops and heavenly generals and the holy warriors. Whoosh, whoosh. The two-star grass trembled slightly. Buzz. A green ray of light streaked across all the members of the heavenly troops and heavenly generals and the holy warriors. The two-star grass could kill a god with 2 wisps of divine fire by surprise. Against more than 100,000 demigod powerhouses, it was an instant kill. In the blink of an eye, the battlefield above the Lingxiao treasured palace seemed to have fallen silent. The shrill shouts of the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals as well as the furious roars of the holy warriors had completely disappeared. The dead silence caused everyone to be slightly shocked. Pa pa pa. Following that, a scene that shocked everyone in the world appeared. All the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, as well as all the holy warriors, fell to the ground one by one. Some of them widened their eyes and were full of anger. Some of them opened their mouths and roared angrily. Some of them were full of fighting spirit, and some of them had fear in their eyes. All kinds of expressions were frozen on their faces, maintaining their expressions before they died. When the members of the Demon War Department saw that all their opponents had been killed, they also let out a slight sigh of relief and looked respectfully at the Dragon King. Hiss, this, heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, holy warriors. Gasps of cold air sounded from the surroundings. Everyone looked at the hundreds of thousands of demigod powerhouses who had fallen in shock and felt their scalps go numb. This was the strongest army of the two major forces. 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. A holy warrior army of the Templars. But now, they had all been killed in an instant. These hundreds of thousands of soldiers, who could easily wipe out Earth, were all killed. Damn it, Dragon King, you deserve to die. Dragon King, the Templar Hall will not rest until you die. Kill us, our 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals, and the Dragon Palace, you will be destroyed. In the sky, when the immortals and gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Templar Hall noticed the situation below, their bodies trembled and they roared with blood-red eyes. This was the strongest army of their two major forces. Chapter 1974. 1974. The gods of 1974 had fallen, and Lingxiao had shattered. Now, it was your turn. When the gods of the Lingxiao Palace and the Holy Church heard this, their hearts trembled. They raised their heads to look at the higher star field. Over there, that incomparably terrifying crab was actually completely suppressing the two gods, Yuan Kuei and Lu Koan. This was their strongest god, igniting 5 wisps of divine fire. Such a terrifying existence, even if placed in the boundless starfield, would be able to control 5 or 6 planets. Now, it was actually completely suppressed. Die for me. You have just ignited the divine fire. I, Brown Warren, don't believe that I can't kill you. An incomparably furious voice sounded. Tens of thousands of meters above the soaring heavens palace, Brown Warren held the scepter of light in his hand. Behind him was a majestic divine kingdom of light. With a wave of his arm, countless spears of light shot towards Xiao Ran. Temph, even if I just lit the divine fire, you are still not my match. Xiao Ran stared coldly at Brown Warren. With the divine weapon in his hand, the divine kingdom that he lifted was the divine kingdom of the 3 wisps of divine fire god. In addition to his origin constitution. With Xiao Ran's current strength, he could almost fight against someone of a higher level. Even though he had just ignited the divine fire, he was still filled with confidence when facing Brown Warren. Xiao Ran, be careful. Ji Lingfei's worried voice came from the side. Don't worry. The first level of the 8 divine fire pagoda, one true flame, burning the sky. He raised his arm, and the 8 divine fire pagoda in his hand rose up. In an instant, the 8 divine fire pagoda grew to over 10,000 meters in size. At the first level, terrifying flames gushed out. The flames were blue in color and looked extremely demonic. BZZZ BZZZ. Rays of light energy were ignited, and the blue flames that blotted out the sky and covered the earth attacked Brown Warren. Protection of the god of light. Brown Warren growled, his eyes flashing with anger. Don't think that just because you have a divine artifact, I will fear you. However, at this moment, a piercing sound was heard. It's just a god of divine fire. Following that, a voice sounded beside his ear, causing him to open his mouth slightly. Cough cough cough. He realized that he was actually unable to speak. Brown Warren slowly lowered his head and looked down. To his horror, he discovered that his body was actually falling downwards. I am not resigned. He seemed to have used all his strength to utter these few words, and instantly felt his vision go black. Xiao Ran was slightly stunned when he saw this scene. He had originally thought that he would have a showdown with Brown Warren and let him know that he was Princess Ji Ling's man. In the end, the corner of his mouth twitched. He looked in the direction of Princess Ji Ling and immediately went to support her. It was just a god with a wisp of divine fire. Just now, he dared to shout at his master, but his master's subordinates could easily kill him. Boom! A second god fell. The wailing of heaven and earth sounded. Everyone watched in shock. The second god who died was a god of the sacred hall. He was still assassinated by that terrifying figure. In this big battle, especially in the battle where the Dragon Palace occupied the top, Ao Yaro's assassination was unusually easy. Kill, kill, kill. The faces of the other gods of the skyscraping treasured palace and the sacred hall changed drastically as they roared furiously. In an instant, an area of several thousand kilometers was covered by a terrifying energy. The sky and earth changed color, and the sun and moon lost their light. Everyone in the world raised their heads to look at the sky. This scene was as if they had seen the stars in the universe explode, and it was terrifying and shocking. No, save me, save me. 10 minutes later, a mournful, earth-shattering sound rang out in the sky. Everyone's faces were shocked once again. They opened their mouths slightly, their eyes filled with fear. Is it the god of the Lingxiao treasured palace, or is it a god who ignited 3 wisps of divine fire? On the Lingxiao treasured palace, more than 10 gods were standing there, looking at the battle in the sky. Seeing the third god fall, their eyebrows twitched violently. Even though they had experienced more terrifying battles than this, the deaths of these gods still made their hearts palpitate. Lord Yuan Kuei, save us, save us. In less than 5 minutes, another terrified voice sounded. Seeing that figure, everyone took a deep breath. The only god in the Lingxiao treasured palace who had lit up the 4 wisps of divine fire was shining with an intense power of lightning. His entire body was entangled by thorns, and a terrifying scene appeared in the sky above him. The thorns seemed to fall from the sky, and there were at least hundreds of millions of them. In the middle of the thorns was an enormous lightning fortress, but at this moment, the fortress was completely covered by thorns. At this moment, the 4 wisps of divine fire looked abnormally weak and helpless. Kill. Ao Xingmu and another Starwood War Department warrior surrounded that god. They roared lightly, and one by one, they pierced through the body of the god in the soaring heavens treasure palace. Lord Yuan Kuei, save me. A weak and panicked voice sounded, and his life force slowly disappeared. The 4th god had fallen. No. Yuan Kuei, who was at least 100,000 meters away from the soaring heavens treasure palace, let out an angry roar when he saw this scene. Oh no, We are not their opponent. Luke Owen saw that 4 gods had already fallen on their side, and a hint of panic flashed through his eyes. 4 gods had already fallen, and more of their gods would fall in the future. In less than an hour, their 2 major factions would be completely finished. This caused a hint of panic to appear in his eyes. Explode. Lightning pool. Yuan Kuei's face was blood red as he stared at Ao Crab in front of him. He waved his arm. In front of him, there was a lightning pool that was about 20 kilometers long, and a lightning ruler that was tens of thousands of meters tall. There were also 3 or 4 earth elemental shields. These were all divine weapons that he had obtained from the ancient lands of the Divine Kingdom. If it weren't for these divine weapons, the 2 of them wouldn't be Ao Xie's match at all. In fact, if it weren't for these divine weapons, they might have died. Boom. A huge explosion sounded, and the entire earth trembled slightly. In the starry sky, lightning covered the entire starry sky, and dazzling lightning flashed on earth. The divine artifact exploded. Yuan Kuei's blood-red gaze stared fixedly at the center. Ka. However, at this moment, that special sound rang out, causing Yuan Kuei and Luke Owen's expressions to change drastically, and a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. A god with 5 wisps of divine fire was definitely not this terrifying. This terrifying crab possessed the strength of a god with 6 wisps of divine fire. Flee. Flee, flee, flee. We aren't their match. Luke Owen immediately roared loudly. At this moment, his fighting spirit had completely vanished. Chapter 1975. 1975. The gods of 1975 had fallen, and Ling Xiao was in pieces. Run, run, run. We're not their match. A panicked and frightened voice came out of Luke Owen's mouth. When he saw that even the self-destruction of the divine artifact was not able to injure the crab, he was already certain that they were definitely not the crab's match. If they continued to fight, the ones who would fall would be them. Ka. If you want to escape, can you? Ao Crab stared coldly at Luke Owen. He moved his 8 claws and attacked them as if he was crossing the void. Around him, earth elemental energy continuously emerged from his body. In the sky, numerous incomparably huge earth mountains gathered. Earth mountains smashed directly at them. It was as if they had encountered a group of meteorites in the starry sky. They directly smashed towards Luke Owen and Yuan Kuei. How could this be? How could this be? Even the self-destruction of the divine artifact wasn't able to injure them. When Yuan Kuei saw this scene, his expression was also extremely aghast. When he saw the earth mountains smashing towards him and heard Luke Owen's voice, his expression was extremely unsightly. Escape. This was the territory of the soaring heavens treasured palace. Where could they escape to? What? However, at this moment, when the gods of the soaring heavens treasured palace and the holy temple heard Luke Owen's words, their expressions changed drastically. Go, return to the holy temple, return to the holy temple. When the gods of the holy temple heard these words, their expressions changed slightly. Without the slightest hesitation, they immediately roared loudly. 4 gods had fallen, and all the holy warriors had died. They were completely no match for the other side. If the strongest expert of the Holy Church couldn't defeat that terrifying crab, then they had no hope of winning. If they continued fighting, only death awaited them. Now that they heard Luke Owen's terrified voice, they didn't hesitate at all. Run, run away from here. Keek, run. Do you think it's that easy to escape? Die, die. Roar, roar, roar. Stop them. Don't let any of them escape. When Prime Minister Tokogi and the rest saw that the other party actually wanted to escape, they instantly unleashed all of their strength. Do you think you can fight us if you want to and run away if you want to? When Wang Xian saw that they actually wanted to escape, a sneer appeared on his face. With a wave of his arm, he grabbed 2-star grass and attacked the 2 gods with a wisp of divine fire. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 2-star grass flickered slightly. The 2 gods of the Holy Hall who were in a panic were instantly penetrated. HMPH, aren't the 2 of you invincible? Why are you trying to escape now? Hua and Seer snorted coldly. With a move, they flew into the sky. Forest canopy. The 2 girls shouted at the same time. The kingdom of God appeared behind them, and a sky that was covered with thorns descended from hundreds of thousands of meters in the sky. It was as if the entire sky was covered by a curtain. Come down. Prime Minister Gui's body trembled and the turtle shell behind him grew bigger instantly. He charged towards the group of gods. 5 elements millstone. At the bottom, Wang Xian opened his mouth. The 5 elements millstone spun and turned into a radius of 70 to 80 kilometers. The 5 elements millstone, which had absorbed a few divine artifacts, was now sufficient to suppress 3 wisps of divine fire. 5 elements restraint. He shouted softly. The strongest restraint of the 5 elements millstone was heading towards the gods. In an instant, just as the gods of the Holy Church were about to escape, powerful binding forces attacked them. Die. The blood sea is boiling. The blood sea is boiling. The 8-limbed devil Shah also shouted, and a force filled with blood and corrosion spread toward the gods in front of him. Heaven and earth are merciless, the sword of heaven and earth. Ao Jian shouted softly, and his cold and merciless voice entered everyone's mind. Using dragons as arrows, 9 dragons killing the heavens. Mao Zedong drew the bowstring fully, and behind him, the wind attribute condensed into an incomparably huge figure. The figure drew the bow and shot the arrows. Roar, roar, roar. The 9 flood dragons roared, and directly came to the arrows. Boom, boom, boom. Streams of wind attribute energy contained the 9 flood dragons. Wang. The heavens and earth shook, and the 9 flood dragons acted as arrows, directly attacking the 9 gods. Lightning water, lightning spear. Ao Qi waved the lightning hammer and lightning spear in his hand, and the lightning hammer and lightning spear clashed violently in the air, and a bolt of lightning seemed to pass through the starry sky. Goyu's chained pupils, kill. Ao Chitian roared wildly, and as his 3 pupils reached out, chains appeared out of thin air, attacking the gods one by one. Dragon cave devouring god. Ao Crab's body shook again when he saw this scene. Terrifying dragon caves appeared in the starry sky behind him. The dragon cave had a terrifying suction force, like a black hole. Thousands of dragon cave black holes, each thousands of meters in size, attacked downward. Terrifying attacks came one after another. At this moment, all the members of the Dragon Palace unleashed their strongest attack. Defend, don't run, defend. A god who had lit 3 wisps of divine fire was shocked by these terrifying attacks, and he quickly shouted, Light protection, divine wings protection, divine kingdom, defend. Pillar of heaven, stand. The wings of the god of light, which were dozens of kilometers in size, blocked the attacks, and the divine kingdom stood in front of them. The massive pillars faced the attacks one by one. However, before the attacks could even begin, screams of pain could be heard. Ao Yarrow, who was hiding in the void, once again delivered a fatal blow. The next moment, screams of pain could be heard again. The 9 flood dragons were arrows, and they unleashed an attack that could threaten 3 wisps of the divine fire god. When the 9 dragon arrows arrived, 6 screams sounded. 3 of the 2 godly fire gods tried their best to dodge the fatal attacks of the dragons. Boom. 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 Then, the explosions of energy collisions sounded, and the Lingxiao Palace trembled violently in the aftermath. On top of the palace, cultivators at the insightful void tier spat out blood and lay on the ground. The screams were endless. Wong 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 wong. The sky was shaking, and the screams were endless. The world was shaking, and suddenly, blood-red rain fell from the sky. No, no. Seeing the horrifying attacks falling on them, some gods shouted in fear when they saw the godly state experts of the Dragon Palace attacking them again. Crack, crack, crack. However, what made the entire world feel even more terrified was that for the first time, the terrifying crab in the sky released a mountain of rubble that smashed into the Lingxiao treasured palace. The Lingxiao treasured palace, which had a circumference of several thousand kilometers, began to slowly crack open, and the buildings on top began to smash downwards. The gods fell, and the Lingxiao shattered. Chapter 1976. 1976. The gods of 1976 had fallen, and Lingxiao had shattered. Rumble. Lingxiao's treasured palace slowly cracked open, and large pieces of buildings fell towards the ground below. Ling Xiao had begun to shatter. Pu. In the starry sky above Ling Xiao's treasured palace, Yuan Kuei saw the gods of Ling Xiao's treasured palace fall one by one. Seeing Ling Xiao shatter, his mind was in a daze, and he was struck directly by a huge mountain of earth. The force that was like a meteorite impact made him spit out blood. Dragon King, if you dare to kill us and destroy the Ling Xiao treasure palace, Earth will lose its momentum and will not be able to reach the boundless galaxy. It will be lost in the starry sky. Yuan Kuei stared at Wang Xian with his blood-red eyes and roared angrily. Oh! When Wang Xian heard his words, he raised his eyebrows slightly. However, he did not ask the members of the Dragon Palace to stop their attacks. Even if Earth did not head to the boundless galaxy and stayed in the original Milky Way galaxy, there would not be any problems. After all, the Earth in the past was a living planet that was isolated for a few thousand light years. I'm afraid that the gods did not have good intentions when they moved Earth to the boundless galaxy. Prime Minister Turtle controlled the huge turtle shell and smashed it at the gods one by one as he said coldly, damn it, you damn beast." Lu Koan roared miserably. He had never expected that the alliance with the Lingxiao Palace would end like this. According to their own forces, they could suppress all the gods on Earth without any problem. Even when the Dragon King revealed more than 20 godly state experts, the Sacred Hall and the Lingxiao Treasured Palace were not too afraid. This was because there was also a big gap between godly state experts. The two forces each had a god who ignited 5 wisps of divine fire, so it should be easy for them to destroy the Dragon King's forces. However, they never expected that the Dragon King had an existence that was even stronger than them. Now, the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Sacred Hall were finished. They were completely finished. Lu Koan and Yuan Kuei's expressions were extremely ferocious as they watched the gods scream. Quickly enter the Pantheon of Gods. The Pantheon of Gods is protected by an array formation. Yuan Kuei's gaze swept through the surroundings. In just a short while, 10 gods had fallen from the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. These were 10 gods. Quick, enter the Temple of All Gods. The gods from the Temple of Lingxiao flew crazily toward the Temple of All Gods in the center. Run back to the sanctuary. The sanctuary can block their attacks. Lu Koan also roared crazily and fled toward the west with a ferocious expression. Crack, fall. Ao Crab completely locked onto Lu Koan and Yuan Kuei. It moved its huge body and 2 huge pincers directly attacked them. Block it for me. There were 3 divine artifacts floating around Yuan Kuei, and one of the shield divine artifacts directly blocked the Ao Crab. Holy light binding. Lu Koan roared, and beams of holy light descended from the sky, directly wrapping around the Ao Crab. Peng. The shield divine artifact was sent flying, and the holy light binding was directly broken. A huge claw attacked Lu Koan. In front of that huge claw, Lu Koan felt as though he was an ant. Pu. An extremely terrifying power landed on his body, causing his expression to change drastically. He immediately spat out a drop of God's blood that was emitting divine light. The God's blood streaked out a ray of light and flew towards the west at a terrifying speed. Peng. His body and his divine kingdom directly fell towards the ground below. No, Lord Lu Koan. A fierce roar came from the surroundings. Everyone looked at Lu Koan's body that was falling towards the ground. The faces of the remaining 5 gods of the sanctuary sank as they roared in despair. Run. As long as we enter the array, we have a chance to survive. I can't die here, I can't. Yuan Kuei's blood burned when he saw this scene. Waves of terrifying divine light enveloped his entire body. His entire body was like blood-red lightning as he instantly entered the Pantheon of Gods in the middle of the skyscraping treasured palace. Buzz. In an instant, a powerful divine light bloomed from the Pantheon of Gods. Come in quickly. Yuan Kuei shouted at the figures outside. Run. Go in. Desperate cries rang out one after another. Looking at the last glimmer of hope, the 7 to 8 godly state experts outside were flying in this direction with all their might. A god was severely injured. He gritted his teeth and spat out a mouthful of divine blood. The divine blood emitted a divine glow as it flew towards the Pantheon of Gods. Hey! Ao Crab, attack the pantheon of gods. Wang Xian frowned slightly when he saw Yuan Kuei escaping into the pantheon of gods. He looked at the rising array formation. There were 7 to 8 strong godly state experts who were trying their best to escape. They were even willing to sacrifice a drop of their divine blood to escape. Under such circumstances, it was difficult for the members of the Dragon Palace to completely hold them back. He immediately gave an order to Ao He. It's the Dragon King. Ao He raised his gigantic pincers and attacked the pantheon of gods below. Boom! A terrifying force landed on the formation. Ripples appeared on the pantheon of gods which was covered by the formation. Crack, crack, crack. However, the buildings around the pantheon of gods seemed to be unable to withstand this terrifying force. The surrounding area cracked rapidly. The entire pantheon of gods broke away from the Ling Xiao treasured palace and landed on the ground below. What a powerful battle tactic! Wang Xian was surprised when he saw that the array formation on top could actually withstand Ao Crab's attack. Sir Yuan Kuei, run. Let's run quickly to the Saint Hall. However, at this moment, in the Hall of the Gods which was covered by the array formation, a god from the Saint Hall immediately shouted loudly. To the Saint Hall. Yuan Kuei didn't hesitate at all. He immediately controlled the array formation and flew toward the west with the Pantheon Temple. If they didn't escape and were surrounded by the powerhouses of the Dragon Palace, even if they hid inside the array formation, they would only be waiting for death. As long as the other party guarded around the Pantheon Temple, they would be killed one day. Buzz! The entire Pantheon Hall emitted a powerful divine glow as it flew towards the west. Behind them, Ao Crab had attacked more than a dozen times but failed to break the formation. The entire Pantheon Hall flew towards the direction of the Holy Church with 8 gods on its back. Among the 8 gods, 3 of them had only managed to escape with a drop of divine blood. There's no need to chase after them. Wang Xian saw this scene and said calmly to Ao Crab. The gods that had escaped were already useless. The Dragon Palace had obtained so many opportunities this time. It would be an easy task to kill them in the future. Everyone in the Ling Xiao treasured palace and the entire world could not help but tremble when they saw this scene. There were 28 gods in the Ling Xiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. Only 5 of them had truly escaped. The rest only had 1 drop of God's blood left. Chapter 1977. 1977 shocked the world. Huff, huff, huff. At this moment, in the Pantheon of Gods, which had completely left the Ling Xiao treasured palace, quickly flew toward the Holy Church. At this moment, in the Pantheon of Gods, Yuan Kuei, the 3 gods of the Holy Church, and the 2 gods of the Ling Xiao treasured palace panted as they looked toward the rear. When they saw that the Dragon King didn't chase after them, they heaved a heavy sigh of relief. One of the gods even collapsed on the ground, cold sweat slowly flowing down his face. Fortunately, the Dragon King's subordinates did not chase after us. Otherwise, we would have been finished. Dead. Nearly 20 gods were completely annihilated. Even Lord Luke Owen only managed to escape with a drop of divine blood. The few gods of the Holy Church spoke in a low voice with an extremely ugly expression. Their faces were somewhat dazed. It's all your Ling Xiao treasured palace's fault. If you had not provoked them, our Holy Church would not have fallen to such a state. A middle-aged god glared angrily at Yuan Kuei and the others. Shut up. One of Yuan Kuei's arms had been cut off, and he was recovering quickly. Hearing their words, he shouted with a gloomy face. Things have already come to this. Let's think about what's going to happen next. After shouting, he closed his eyes slightly. Now is not the time to quarrel. 2 gods of our sanctuary did not come this time. The array formation in the sanctuary is enough to resist the Dragon King's attack, but next. Don't tell me we have to hide in the array formation for 4 years. Moreover, now that the soaring heavens treasured palace has been destroyed, Earth will lose the motivation to go to the boundless star field. Forget about 4 years, even 40 or 400 years won't be enough to reach our boundless star field. A god from the Holy Church stood there and said with a solemn face, "Go back to your Holy Church and save Brother Luke Owen. We'll talk about it later." Yuan Kuei said helplessly in his heart. He had never expected that the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church would be defeated so thoroughly this time. Utterly defeated. Furthermore, now that Earth had lost the motivation of the Lingxiao treasured palace, it would be stuck in this void. They would be completely finished. Wait a minute, don't speak. Yuan Kuei took a deep breath and waved his arm. A mirror appeared in front of him. The mirror trembled slightly. He knelt in front of the mirror and an old man's figure slowly appeared. What's the matter? A voice filled with dignity sounded, causing Yuan Kuei to lower his head unconsciously. Master, it's my fault for being incompetent. Our Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church were completely defeated by a force from Earth. Now, only 3 godly state experts have escaped safely. The Lingxiao treasured palace has also been destroyed. Yuan Kuei said in a low voice. Huh? There was a hint of surprise and coldness in his dignified voice. A terrifying pressure shot out from his eyes. The old man glanced at the people around him through the mirror, his eyes flashing with anger. I'll go find the people of the Holy Church. You guys work together and wait for the order. After the old man finished speaking, his figure completely disappeared. Dragon King, Dragon King. Yuan Kuei clenched his fists when he saw his master's figure disappear. A bloodthirsty look appeared on his face as he growled. If it weren't for the Dragon King, the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall would have joined forces to rule the world and control the entire earth. Everything was the Dragon King. At the same time, everyone in the Lingxiao treasured palace looked up in shock. In the starry sky above, there was a divine kingdom floating in the sky. On the Lingxiao treasured palace, there was also a divine kingdom crashing directly onto it. The corpses of the gods and drops of blood rained down from the sky. At this moment, the entire Lingxiao treasured palace within a radius of several thousand kilometers was deathly silent. Seeing the end of the war, some people who were lying on the ground crawled up in fear. Rumble. In the sky sacrifice, the blood rain caused thunder and lightning. Lightning flashed and illuminated the current Lingxiao treasured palace. It was dilapidated, completely dilapidated. The array formation and divine light on it had completely disappeared. The extremely eye-catching God Ascension board in the sky had completely cracked and collapsed. One could vaguely see the 2 words Dragon King on it, which looked unusually ironic. The disciples who had come with the gods from the Lingxiao treasured palace were now full of panic and fear. The gods had died, and the gods had fled. Would the Dragon King kill them all next? Everyone was panicking. Sweep through all the corpses, the divine kingdom, and the Lingxiao treasured palace. Prime Minister Gui's voice sounded. The experts of the Dragon Palace moved and gathered all the treasures in the skyscraping treasured palace. Dragon King. Soon, the members of the Dragon Palace flew over with smiles on their faces. This time, there were 23 corpses of the gods and the divine kingdom left here. Absorbing these resources would greatly increase the strength of the Dragon Palace. Master, Master. Xiao Ran and Ji Lingfei flew over with smiles on their faces. Their faces were filled with respect. This was especially so for Ji Lingfei. She had never expected Xiao Ran's master to be so terrifying. He had almost destroyed the Holy Church and the Lingxiao treasured palace. This battle was destined to shake the world. Okay. Wang Xian swept his gaze across them and revealed a faint smile. He turned around slowly and looked at the dozens of gods around him. These gods were all gods who had fallen before. When they saw Wang Xian's gaze, their hearts skipped a beat. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A few of the gods were obviously prepared. Their figures disappeared in an instant. The few true dragon sons of heaven also disappeared in an instant. They had made preparations in advance. Even if Wang Xian and the rest wanted to keep them, they wouldn't be able to do so. Cough cough, we pay our respects to the Dragon King. The Dragon King is mighty. The young master of the celestial race who lit the divine fire didn't leave. When he saw Wang Xian's gaze, he smiled and cupped his hands. It wasn't his first time dealing with the Dragon King. If the Dragon King wanted to kill him, he would have been finished long ago. Therefore, he mustered his courage and did not run away. Obviously, if he could befriend the Dragon King now, He would not have to worry about anything on Earth in the future. Greetings, Dragon King. At the side, there was still one god who did not run away. He bowed respectfully to Wang Xian. Okay. Wang Xian looked at the two gods who stayed behind and nodded with a faint smile. Of the two gods who had lit the divine fire not long ago, one was rather familiar with them. Wang Xian did not intend to make a move against them. As long as he did not provoke them, he would not kill one god after another for no reason. Even if he killed them, he would be able to promote the members of the Dragon Palace. Buzz. Wang Xian turned his head and looked at the disciples of the Ling Xiao treasured palace. Greetings, Dragon King. At this moment, the elites and powerhouses from the major forces of Earth immediately knelt on the ground behind the disciples of the Ling Xiao treasured palace and greeted loudly. Greetings, Dragon King. When the disciples of the Ling Xiao treasured palace saw this scene, they immediately knelt on the ground and shouted loudly. Chapter 1978. 1978 King 1978. Greetings to the Dragon King. At this moment, these four words resounded throughout the sky above the Ling Xiao treasured palace. When everyone in the world saw this scene through the satellite, they were extremely shocked. All the disciples of the Ling Xiao treasured palace and all the elites of Earth knelt there at this moment and shouted these four words loudly. Everyone understood in their hearts that the Real King had appeared. He was the Dragon King. In this dilapidated and desolate Ling Xiao treasured palace, another new king had appeared in the sky. The blood rain continued to fall from the sky. The thunder seemed to be calling for the birth of a king. Wang Xian stood there and looked at the tens of millions of people kneeling in front of him. A smile appeared on his face. He looked at the front of the Ling Xiao treasured palace. There, a figure felt the Dragon King's gaze. His body began to tremble and a large amount of sweat instantly formed on his back. Buzz. A terrifying energy landed on his body out of thin air. The former number one divine son of the Ling Xiao treasured palace followed the gods in the sky and dissipated. The people around the number one divine son of the Ling Xiao treasured palace felt this scene and their faces were filled with fear. Their bodies were trembling violently. They raised their heads and looked ahead. Get up. Wang Xian waved his arm indifferently. An extremely powerful force made them stand up immediately. Let's go. Wang Xian looked at his subordinates and spoke to them. Then, he flew straight down. Hihi, let's go. Mo Sha smiled sinisterly and followed behind him. They flew toward the location of Jiang City. Xiao Ran and the others followed behind, flying downwards. Behind them, in the Ling Xiao Palace, everyone watched this scene in awe, until the Dragon King and the others completely disappeared from sight. Who, next? This world is once again enveloped by the Dragon King. The gods are dead, and those who flee are fleeing. The lofty Ling Xiao Palace is completely destroyed, and blood rain falls from the sky. A new king is born. How can there be such a terrifying existence in the world? The Dragon King is clearly a native of Earth. How can he fight against the gods who have lived for tens of thousands of years? More than 10 years ago, the Dragon King's might enveloped the entire world. The world revered the Dragon King, and now, it's still the same. When the Dragon King's figure completely disappeared, some people muttered. Everything that happened today shocked them. All the gods in the sky, more than 20 of them, were all killed. The heavens and earth mourned and the gods died. However, not a single one of the Dragon King's subordinates died. The Invincible 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals were all killed. The 40,000 to 50,000 warriors of the Holy Warrior Army were all killed. The day of the alliance between the Ling Xiao treasured palace and the Holy Church became the day that they fell from the altar. Although some gods had escaped, it was difficult to fight against the current Dragon King. The disciples of the Ling Xiao treasured palace were in a daze. Back then, they were high and mighty because of the background of the Ling Xiao treasured palace, but now, Xiao Ran is the real crown prince. No, Xiao Ran has already become a god, and he has a divine weapon in his hand. Some of the divine sons and disciples in the Ling Xiao treasured palace had bitter expressions on their faces. In the past, Xiao Ran was just an ordinary disciple who was not even ranked in the Ling Xiao treasured palace. However, the Dragon King's return not long ago had greatly increased his strength. Even so, He was only about the same as them. In fact, they still did not put Xiao Ran in their eyes. After all, there was a huge gap between the Dragon King and the Lingxiao treasured palace. But now, Xiao Ran had lit the divine fire and held the divine weapon in his hand. The Dragon King's might shook the world. At this moment, the internet was even more explosive. The entire world was talking about this battle. Everyone was talking about the Dragon King. Even the gods were frowning as they looked at the messages in deep thought. The Dragon King had single-handedly destroyed the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. His strength was even more terrifying. Next, they had to think about how to face the Dragon King. Wow, there are so many treasures. Wang Xian didn't pay any attention to the commotion outside. On top of the villa, Hua and Cai were looking at the treasures one by one with glowing eyes. There were a total of 8 divine artifacts that were extremely precious to gods. There were all kinds of elixirs and spiritual herbs. There were countless of them. There were even 7 to 8 spiritual herbs of the godly state. This made the 2 little girls look excited. Take whatever you like. Wang Xian patted the 2 little girls' heads and said with a smile. Daddy is the best. I want this spiritual herb. I want one too. I want this. The 2 little girls were picking and picking with smiles on their faces. Hee hee. Wang Xian smiled at the side. Sensing the huge changes in the Dragon Palace, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. This time, the biggest reward from killing the gods was not the elixirs, herbs, and divine artifacts, but the divine kingdoms and corpses. Among the 22 corpses of the gods, the highest was Lukoan's corpse. Although he escaped with a drop of divine blood, most of the energy was still in his body. One of the corpses that ignited 5 wisps of divine fire, one of the 4 wisps of divine fire, and 3 of the 3 wisps of divine fire. The rest were gods who had ignited 2 wisps of divine fire. These corpses could increase the number of god-level experts in the Dragon Palace by at least a dozen. Apart from these, there were 3 fire-type gods, 2 thunder-type gods, 2 metal-type gods, and 2 darkness-type gods among them. The members of the Demon War Division, along with the fire-type and thunder-type divinities, could turn into a berserk dragon. Aochi and the other members of the Thunder Department, along with their darkness and fire godheads, could turn into wild dragons. The Fire Hammer clan could turn into the strongest forged dragon of the Dragon Palace, the Fire Gold Dragon. The strange demon could turn into a thorned dragon with its darkness godhead. These improvements were a huge change for a member of the Dragon Palace. Just like the most ordinary Fire Hammer clan. If they were converted into Fire Gold Dragon seeds and given godler-level materials, they would be able to forge a divine weapon. Aochi's advancement to the Berserk Dragon seed would be the same as Ao Chitian and Ao Xingmu. He would be able to fight across 3 levels. Once the members of the Dragon Palace used up all these resources, they would receive a huge improvement. Apart from these corpses, the Divine Kingdoms would also be a huge improvement for the Dragon Palace and Ao Crab. At this moment, Wang Xian could already feel that the Dragon Palace was undergoing a huge change. Currently, the Dragon Palace lacked the 3 Divine Kingdoms of the Thunder, Light, and Wood attributes. All of them had been gathered. The Dragon Palace had already devoured all the Divine Kingdoms of the 9 attributes. Now, the Dragon Palace was already improving. When the level 5 Dragon Palace was upgraded to level 6, there would be an earth-shaking change. With the improvement of the Dragon Palace, I will be able to directly lift up the Divine Kingdoms. It's time for me to make a trip to the Transcendence continent. When the time comes, I will move the Dragon Palace to the ocean on Earth. Wang Xian thought to himself. This time, he would be able to advance to the godly state completely. Once the kingdom of God was lifted, with his strength, he would be able to fight against a god with 5 wisps of divine fire. Chapter 1979. 1979. In 1979, the Dragon Palace was upgraded and the kingdom of God was lifted up. Let's go out for a while. Hua, Saya, you guys stay with Xiaoran and the rest for the next few days. Wang Xian spoke to the 2 disgruntled girls for a while before flying straight towards the Pacific Ocean. The Dragon Palace was being upgraded. Wang Xian rushed over now to upgrade his strength. He had a premonition that the upgrade of the Dragon Palace this time would bring about a huge change. After all, those below the godly state were all ants. The transformation of the Dragon Palace into the godly state was the biggest change. A group of members of the Dragon Palace followed behind and flew toward the location that connected to the supernatural mainland. Due to the changes in the Earth's crust, that location was completely under the sea. It was impossible for anyone to discover this place. Wang Xian came to the entrance and entered the supernatural mainland directly. Phew! When he arrived at the sea area of the extraordinary mainland, Wang Xian scanned his surroundings with a smile. It had been almost a year since he went to Earth. During this 1 year, his improvement could be said to be tremendous. Buzz! He led the members of the Dragon Palace and teleported away quickly. A few minutes later, Wang Xian arrived above the Dragon Palace first. At this moment, all the members of the Dragon Palace were suspended in the air. They looked at the Dragon Palace, which was undergoing tremendous changes, in shock. The Dragon Palace was expanding at a terrifying speed. The Dragon Palace, which was hundreds of kilometers in radius, had now expanded to thousands of kilometers. The height of the ocean pacifying needle had reached about 10,000 meters. The Dragon King Palace, the Dragon Transformation Pool, the Dragon Field, and other places had all expanded by 3 or 4 times. The Dragon Caves were emitting a mysterious light. Behind the Dragon Throne, the ancestral tree had also received tremendous growth due to the improvement of the Dragon Palace. Even the Endless Wood, the Soul-Returning Wood, the Servitude Tree, and the Nirvana Lightning Wood had produced many fruits. This time, the number of fruits was 3 to 4 times more than the previous time. Buzz! At this moment, Wang Xian suddenly realized that an area had suddenly appeared beside the Dragon Transformation Pool. In this area, different buildings were slowly emerging. These buildings were like insect nests. The densely packed insect nests were similar to dragon nests. There were a total of 200,000 of them. Ding! Congratulations, host. The Dragon Palace has devoured 9 divine kingdoms with different attributes. Its level has been upgraded to level 6. Ding! Congratulations, host. The Dragon Palace has unlocked the building, Dragon Nest. Ding! Congratulations, host. All the attributes of the Dragon Palace have been doubled. At this moment, the sound of system notifications rang out one after another, causing Wang Xian's eyes to flash with astonishment. Dragon Palace, Level 6. Dragon Master, Wang Xian, Longevity 9 Stage Yin-Yang 5 Elemental Divine Dragon. Building. Dragon King Hall, Level 6, increases the cultivation speed and recovery speed of the Dragon King by 192 times. Dragon Transformation Pool, Level 6, absorbing dragon blood can give birth to a dragon seed, Divine Crystal, 457, 545, 4322. Dragon Gate, Level 6, a fish can only become a dragon after leaping through the Dragon Gate, effective against creatures below the Eternal Lord level. Ocean Pacifying Needle, Level 6, Pillar of the Dragon Palace, pacifying 4,000 kilometers of calm in the Dragon Palace, increasing the combat strength of the members of the Dragon Palace by 1,000%. Dragon Cave, Level 6, with 100,000 dragon caves, the cultivation speed of the creatures in the Dragon Cave will be increased by 128 times. Dragon Field, Level 6, practice martial arts in the Dragon Field, increase comprehension by 64 times. Dragon Array, Level 6, Dragon Palace Array, concealment, defense, gathering of spiritual energy, wormhole, detection, attack. Spiritual items. Ancestral Tree. Level, able to return the soul of creatures below the Eternal Lord level. Activate the spiritual intelligence of creatures. Increases the speed of fire attribute cultivators by 400%. Increases the speed of wood attribute cultivators by 400%, and lightning attribute cultivators by 400%. Annex, Dragon Transformation Pool to nurture dragon species. Current dragon species, golden swordfish, thunder shrimp, demon monkey, strange demon, light thorn, hydra, dragon turtle, yakshaw, clam girl, golden lobster, starwood dragon species, fire phoenix dragon species. Special buildings. Dragon Nest, Dragon of Devouring, none. Dragon of devouring, energy consumption can be used to create its own insect-like species. The queen insect feeds on all kinds of metal materials. The information about the Dragon Palace appeared in Wang Xian's mind. Looking at the Dragon Palace, which had all its attributes increased, a hint of excitement appeared in Wang Xian's eyes. Some of the buildings in the Dragon Palace had also undergone subtle changes. For example, the teleportation of the dragon formation had turned into a wormhole. The dragon nest, which was a special building, had been added, as well as the so-called Dragon of Devouring. A level 6 Dragon Palace could completely withstand the attacks of anyone below the level of the Eternal Lord. After the upgrade, the Dragon Palace emitted a terrifying divine might. In the surroundings, countless sea creatures from the extraordinary sea were worshipping in this direction. Next, it's time for me to ignite the divine fire. Wang Xian took a deep breath. Roar. A dragon's roar came from his mouth. Wang Xian transformed into his dragon form and raised his head to roar toward the sky. The terrifying pressure spread in all directions. Buzz. A wisp of divine fire rose above Wang Xian's head. Rise up, Dragon Palace, turn into the kingdom of dragons. Wang Xian let out a low roar. The entire gigantic Dragon Palace was shrouded in divine light. Boom. The Dragon Palace that was over 1,000 kilometers in circumference slowly rose up and flew toward the sky above him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the heaven and earth changed drastically. A 7-colored ray of light drifted over from afar. Its coverage area reached over 100,000 kilometers in circumference. The divine kingdom that was more than 1,000 kilometers slowly floated above Wang Xian. Roar. Wang Xian felt the majestic power coming from the Dragon Palace, and his face revealed an excited expression. Finally, he could raise the divine kingdom in his hand high up. Igniting the divine fire and lifting the divine kingdom was his first step into the universe. Roar, roar, roar. Wang Xian let out an excited roar. The roar of the dragon's might reverberated across an area of more than 100,000 kilometers. On the Dragon Palace, waves of majestic energy entered his body. Wang Xian's body grew again. It grew to a length of 6,000 meters. The 7-colored dragon scales, the majestic dragon head, the real divine item. At this moment, Wang Xian felt that he could draw an endless stream of energy from the Dragon Palace. He felt that even if he was constantly fighting, he would not feel tired. The Dragon Palace had turned into a divine kingdom and became his source of strength. In the void where there was no spiritual energy, he could also unleash a terrifying strength. Roar, roar, roar. At this moment, above the Dragon Palace, the shadows of 9 divine dragons suddenly circled. With a thought from Wang Xian, the Dragon Palace actually shrank rapidly. It contains the heaven and earth. Excitement shot out from Wang Xian's eyes. It contained the heaven and earth like a spirit storage bag. Even though the Dragon Palace was 1,000 meters in size, the space inside was still 1,000 kilometers in size. If I summon the Dragon Palace to fight, he mumbled and his body shook. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, 9 gigantic pillars of heaven were erected around him. Each pillar of heaven was 100,000 meters tall. Each pillar was 10,000 meters in size and had a divine dragon entrenched on it. In the sky above the pillars, the Dragon Palace that was 1,000 kilometers in radius appeared. Hiss, if I summon the kingdom of God and unleash my full strength, I can easily kill AO Crab. Wang Xian's face was filled with excitement. With the transformation of the Dragon Palace into the kingdom of God, he would be able to fight 6 levels higher. Heaven defying. Chapter 1980. 1981,980 Promotion of members of Dragon Palace. Name, Wang Xian. Race, Yin-Yang 5 Elements Divine Dragon, Mandragon Unity. Level, a wisp of divine fire, 5th change of divine dragon transformation. Divine Crystal, 335422211000000000. Supernatural ability, ruling the water tribe below one's level. Devouring creatures to extract divine crystals. Control of the 5 elements. Cultivation method, divine dragon transformation. Supernatural ability, soul capture, spirit attachment, yin-yang 5 elements dragon eyes. Aspect, 5 elements grinding, dragon kingdom in the palm, dragon head under the heavens, dragon body of 10,000 miles, yin-yang poles, yin-yang 5 elements arms bowl, divine dragon tail swing. Divine kingdom, dragon palace. Dragon palace owned, level 6. Dragon palace members, 26,433. Looking at his own attributes, Wang Xian revealed an excited look. Now that the divine dragon transformation had reached the 5th transformation, he could be considered to have entered the growth stage of the divine dragon tribe in the past. However, as the first 7-colored divine dragon in the history of the divine dragon clan, the 7 attributes, together with the divine kingdom of the dragon palace, allowed him to fight 6 levels above him. What kind of concept was this? After Wang Xian summoned the divine kingdom, he could fight against the god who had ignited 7 wisps of divine fire. He could even kill AO Crab easily. The improvement this time could be said to be a huge qualitative change. The 6,000-meter-long body of the divine dragon was shimmering with divine radiance under the sunlight. The dragon palace that stood on the 10,000-meter-long dragon pillar in the sky was incomparably majestic. It suppressed the entire world. What's going on over there? Has the Dragon King become a god? Or has the Dragon King improved again? At the seaside of the extraordinary sea, some people from the extraordinary continent looked at this scene with shock on their faces. The Dragon King was getting stronger. Phew. Wang Xian sensed the dragon palace that had transformed into a divine kingdom. He smiled and placed it into the sea. After the dragon palace had transformed into a divine kingdom, he could store it back into his body and place it anywhere. With just a thought, he could summon it back for battle. Congratulations on becoming a god, Dragon King. All the members of the dragon palace bowed to Wang Xian respectfully. Get up and take a look at the upgraded dragon palace, Wang Xian said with a smile on his face. He moved and arrived at the Dragon King Hall of the Dragon Palace. The spiritual energy in the current Dragon King Hall was 192 times that of the outside world. The concentration of the spiritual energy in the blood of the 4 or 5 wisps of divine fire god was only tens of times that of the Dragon Palace. There was a huge gap between them and the Dragon Palace. The most eye-catching thing in the Dragon King's palace was the ancestral tree behind the dragon throne. The ancestral tree, which was only a dozen meters in size back then, had reached a height of 1,000 meters after the upgrade of the dragon palace. There were many branches on the branches of the ancestral tree. There were 8 fruits hanging on each branch. These fruits were a huge treasure to the dragon palace. Look at the dragon nest. Wang Xian looked at the back of the dragon transformation pool. There was a special building there. The dragon nest was originally called the insect nest. Now that it had merged with the dragon palace, it was called the dragon nest. The most powerful aspect of the insect race was their insect nest and mother insect. Using the insect nest, they could quickly reproduce their underlings. As long as they had enough materials, they could improve quickly. The greatest danger of the Zerg was that they could devour a planet at a terrifying speed when they entered it. When this planet lost all its metallic materials and energy, it would turn into a Death Star. No living beings could be born on the Death Star. AO Crab. Wang Xian sized up the nests in the dragon nest. In the middle of the nest, there was an extremely hideous mother nest. The mother nest occupied an area of about 10,000 meters. It was a huge head with pitch-black horns and black scales all over its body. It had a body of about 5,000 to 6,000 meters and looked similar to the bone dragon. However, it was much uglier and more hideous than the bone dragon. This was the image of the mother nest, also known as the devouring dragon. As he sized up the nest, he shouted at AO Crab. Dragon King. AO Crab flew over and sized up the dragon nest in front of him with a burning gaze. Perhaps it was due to AO Crab's bloodline, he had some similarities with the characteristics of demons and insects. It was obviously the best choice for AO Crab to become the devouring dragon. Enter and see if you can increase your strength. Wang Xian gave him an order. It's the Dragon King. AO Crab nodded his head. His body moved and transformed into the form of a crab. Splash. Following that, Small crabs crawled out from his body one by one and rushed crazily towards the surrounding nests. These 4 to 5 meter-sized small crabs already possessed the strength of a level 8 demigod. There were a total of 30,000 small crabs. Such a terrifying improvement speed was much faster than the improvement speed of the members of the Dragon Palace. Ao Crab's 10,000-meter-long body moved and entered the dragon nest with some excitement. Evolving. When Wang Xian saw Ao Crab entering the mother nest and the message that came from inside, he smiled. After the evolution, Ao Crab would be even stronger. At that time, he should be able to match his strength. Prime Minister Gui. Wang Xian shouted again. Dragon King. Prime Minister Gui's figure appeared beside him immediately. Use all the godheads and fruits on the ancestral tree to increase the strength of the members of the Dragon Palace. Focus on the evolution of the Berserk Dragons and the Starward Combat Division. Wang Xian gave him an order. It's the Dragon King. Prime Minister Gui nodded. 8 fruits and a group of godheads could increase the number of Berserk dragon species in the Dragon Palace by 10. It could increase the Fire Hammer clan by 2 Fire Gold dragon species and the Strange Demon clan by 2 Thorned dragon species. The remaining corpse resources could increase the Starward dragon species by 2 Godly State members. After this upgrade, the strength of the Dragon Palace would receive another huge boost. After the upgrade of the Dragon Palace, if I were to face the Holy Church and the Soaring Heavens Treasured Palace again, I would be able to kill all the gods within 3 minutes. Wang Xian thought to himself. He was in a great mood as he rose to the sky above the Dragon Palace and looked down at the underwater palace that was more than 1,000 kilometers long. After they upgraded, Wang Xian was ready to transfer the Dragon Palace to Earth. The resources on Earth were much more than those on the supernatural continent. If there were any more changes on Earth, the Dragon Palace would control all the resources. As for the other gods, if they were not convinced, they could suppress them directly. With the current strength of the Dragon Palace, they could do it. While the members of the Dragon Palace were promoted, on Earth, everyone was discussing about the Dragon King for a few days. They were discussing the war. Even now, when they raised their heads, they could still see the shattered skyscraping treasured palace in the sky. Every time they raised their heads, their hearts were filled with shock. In these few days, Xiao Ran returned to the Dragon Gate Academy and became the principal of the academy. Ji Lingfei became the vice principal of the academy. After the news was announced, the Dragon Gate Academy immediately became the strongest force in the world. 2 gods as the dean of the academy, and behind the Dragon King, who dared to provoke. Chapter 1981. 1981 Wandering the Earth. The Dragon King's title of king seems to be the same as more than 10 years ago. He hasn't unified the world. Even if he has invincible strength, he hasn't established any forces or rules. With the current strength of the Dragon King and the others, there might not be anything that can attract him. Time slowly passed. Ever since the Dragon King had destroyed 2 major forces, the entire world had once again become peaceful. This time, it was much calmer than before. The gods who had lit the divine fire and the true dragon sons of heaven were keeping a low profile. They didn't even dare to be too arrogant. Now, most of the gods had gathered around the 2 tombs at the North and South Poles. Especially the South Pole. Not a single person had entered the Lightwing God Lord's tomb yet. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. A month later, a major event occurred. A true dragon's son of heaven entered the vast starry skies and never returned. This news caused everyone to speculate. Very quickly, people thought of Earth. Before the Dragon King fought against the 2 major forces, the Soaring Heavens Treasured Palace wanted to lead Earth into the boundless galaxy with great power. But now, the Soaring Heavens Treasured Palace is almost in ruins. Earth has stopped spinning in the unknown starry skies. We can be sure that there are no life planets in a large area around our Earth. There should be many life planets in the boundless galaxy. The gods must be trying to enter places where there are many living planets. That's why they flew out of Earth and into the starry skies. Earth is still too small for the gods. Now that the Dragon King is on Earth, he's intimidating all the gods. The gods don't want to be restricted, so they want to leave Earth. This has little to do with US mortals. If Earth enters the boundless galaxy, it might be a good thing for us, or it might be a bad thing. On the internet, countless people were discussing that Earth had already stopped in the void, so it didn't have much of an impact on the people on Earth. But for those who had followed the gods to descend, they were full of panic. Many people had followed the gods here for opportunities. They had their own families in the boundless galaxy, and now that Earth had stopped, they couldn't go back at all. This made some people very dissatisfied with the Dragon King. However, they didn't dare to show it. The power that the Dragon King had now was too strong. Has that guy obtained the star map? He actually dared to charge out directly. It must be known that there might not be any life planets in the billions of light years nearby. If he encounters cosmic storms, cosmic lights, or something like that, even a God realm expert wouldn't be able to withstand it. At this moment, 4 figures were sitting in a room at the North Pole. One of them, a young man, said with a frown. It said that the Lingxiao treasured Palace's sacred hall and the others used 3 years to descend to Earth. In the middle, more than a dozen gods fell. This was even before the star map. Without the star map, the death rate would be even higher. Another young man beside him knocked on the table lightly. Now that Earth has stopped here and the Dragon King is so powerful, we only have 2 ways. We can find the star map and leave this place, or we can take this planet and continue to advance. But the premise is that the people of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall will lead the way, and the Dragon King won't stop us. It's impossible for the Dragon King not to stop us. Now it's very clear that once Earth really reaches the boundless galaxy, the forces behind the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall will definitely destroy the Dragon King and the others. The Dragon King will definitely not take the risk. Sigh, this is really troublesome. I had originally thought of leaving when Earth was about to enter the boundless galaxy, but now, the 4 figures said somewhat helplessly, thinking about how they had fallen hundreds of thousands of years ago, and now that they had revived and obtained the Dragon Soul, they had originally thought that they would be able to suppress the world for an entire lifetime. They had never thought that the Dragon King would appear out of nowhere and suppress them, making them extremely fearful. Now, they were even more passive. Ian, this brother, since you are here, show yourself. At this moment, a young man's ears twitched slightly as he looked up. Ian. The other 3 figures were also slightly stunned as they narrowed their eyes. As expected of the true dragon's son of heaven. I immediately discovered him the moment I arrived. A middle-aged man in a black robe appeared and looked at them expressionlessly. Oh, who did I think it was? It turns out to be a stray dog from the Lingxiao treasured palace. A young man looked at the middle-aged man in a black robe and said with slight disdain. The middle-aged man in a black robe was stunned and slowly became embarrassed. His chest rose and fell slightly. For true dragon's son of heaven, I represent the Lingxiao treasured palace and the holy church to invite you to join us. Join you? You're not joking, right? Join you and let the Dragon King torture you? The black-robed middle-aged man said, but before he could finish, a mocking voice sounded. You should know that only our Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall have the star map. I can tell you without exaggeration that without the star map, it's almost impossible to enter the boundless star field or any other life star field. Even if we had the star atlas back then, we still lost more than 10 God realm experts, and this was with the help of the experts from our forces, Black Robe continued to say expressionlessly. And then, the 4 young men also put away their mocking expressions. The god of the Lingxiao treasured palace was also telling the truth. Continue to bring Earth to the boundless star field. The forces behind us can guarantee that after we enter, they won't attack you. We're even willing to give you some resources. The black-robed middle-aged man continued. Hehe, then what do we need to do? A young man smiled and continued to ask. Stop the Dragon King from disturbing you? I think it's better to forget it. Even if the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall join forces with all the gods, they won't be enough to fight the Dragon King. Before we have the strength to fight against Dragon Bay, we won't send ourselves to our death. Before the black-robed middle-aged man could answer, the youth beside him said directly, what if we have the strength to fight against the Dragon King? Do you all want to join us? The black-robed middle-aged man looked at them and suddenly asked. Huh? The 4 youths who were sitting there were slightly stunned and slowly stood up. When you have it, come and find us. The 4 of them looked at each other and said expressionlessly, "All right." The black-robed middle-aged man nodded slightly and disappeared in a flash. If they really have the strength to fight against the Dragon King, we... Seeing the black-robed middle-aged man leave, a figure frowned and asked faintly, "We still don't know the Dragon King's attitude. If they really have the strength, we can consider it," a young man said with a twinkle in his eyes. The 4 of them were members of the True Dragon Association. After the skyscraping treasured palace and the sacred hall were almost destroyed by the Dragon King, the True Dragon Association had one more member. There were 2 of them, but one of them broke into the starry sky. Chapter 1982. 1982, the final trump card of the Lingxiao Holy Church. How is it? The Holy Church was located in a mountain range in the west. At this moment, there were 9 figures sitting inside the Holy Church. Yuan Kuei, who was in the center, looked at the black-robed middle-aged man and asked with a frown. As expected, before we have the power to fight against the Dragon King, all the gods will not join us. The Dragon King's force is too strong. The black-robed middle-aged man shook his head slightly, his eyes filled with helplessness. Right now, the people of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall were cowering in the sacred hall and didn't dare to go out. They were afraid that the Dragon King would lead his subordinates to attack them. In the boundless starfield, even if an expert who has ignited 8 or 9 wisps of divine fire arrives here, it will take at least 2 years. This time is too long. Right now, we only have one way. Luke Owen sat beside Yuan Kuei and said with a gloomy face. Right now, his body looked like a child. The energy in his body was extremely weak, and his strength was only at the demigod realm. He sat there and looked a little comical. He wasn't the only one who looked like this in the sacred hall. After Luke Owen finished speaking, he looked at a young man next to him. In the sacred hall, everyone was looking at that young man. "We've already received orders from the higher-ups. We can help you recover your cultivation with all our might, but remember your promise," Yuan Kuei said to the young man. "Don't worry, but you have to remember your promise." A trace of excitement flashed through the young man's eyes as he said to Yuan Kuei and the others, "Don't worry." Yuan Kuei and the others nodded and handed the interspatial rings to the young man one by one. "These are all the resources of our precious skyscraping hall. These are all the resources of our sacred hall. These resources should be enough for you to recover to the level of 7 wisps of divine fire." One by one, the interspatial rings flew to the young man's side. The young man stretched out his hand and checked the resources inside. His eyes were burning with passion. In the past 10 years, Earth had recovered. The resources the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sanctuary had obtained far exceeded everyone's expectations. However, this didn't mean that they could enjoy the resources themselves. They had to keep 50% of the resources and hand them over when they returned to the boundless star area. But now, they had to take them all out. The young man in front of them was the god of resurrection that the Lingxiao treasured palace had subdued in a divine country. In front of him, he had the strength of 8 wisps of divine fire. Now, he had ignited 1 wisp of divine fire. As long as he was given enough resources, he could quickly recover to his peak. The last trump card of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall was to use all their resources to recover their strength as soon as possible. At that time, as long as they could suppress the Dragon King, everything they had done was worth it. "I'll go and recover my strength now. It won't be long before I can suppress all of the Dragon King and the others. Ha ha ha." The young man took the interspatial rings one by one with an excited expression on his face. With a move of his body, he disappeared. If it weren't for the 2 eternal godlords' divine tombs on the planet, Master and the others wouldn't have been willing to take out so many resources. Yuan Kuei looked at the young man who had disappeared and muttered, "At this time, as long as we can destroy that Dragon King, everything will be fine." Luke Owen looked at his own body and a look of hatred appeared on his face. The reason why he had become like this was all because of the Dragon King. Unless we can kill him with 100% certainty, we must not act rashly this time. Yuan Kuei's eyes were also filled with hatred as he growled. Being forced to such a state by a dragon king was something they would never have imagined. Is there a way to enter the two tombs? Luke Owen looked at a god beside him and asked. No, no one has entered the South Pole tomb. There are a few main mountain peaks in the North Pole, but no one has entered. The god shook his head. The tomb of the Lord God is not that easy to enter, Yuan Kuei said softly. If we can enter, if we can obtain the Lord God's inheritance, then the little dragon king has nothing to fear. Luke Owen sighed softly. Soon, the temple was silent. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, I've entered, I've finally entered. However, at this moment, in the middle of a mountain in the North Pole graveyard, a young man was trembling as he stared at a statue shrouded in divine light. He was extremely excited as he walked towards the statue, tears welling up in his eyes. This is my opportunity. This is a great opportunity that belongs to me. I was originally a grain of sand in the boundless star field. I followed the gods here, but I'm still like dust. Today, I finally got my chance. I want to ride the wind and break through the 9 heavens. Not long after, I will let my name resound throughout the entire starry sky. Ha ha ha. This world, wait for my return. The young man trembled as he walked to the front of the statue. With a plop, he knelt down and kowtowed heavily. Wang. At this moment, the divine light of the statue shone brightly, enveloping it. A prostrating figure knelt there. Boom. 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 At this moment, the entire North Pole divine tomb suddenly emitted a majestic pressure. The incomparably terrifying pressure caused everyone in the divine tomb to reveal shocked expressions. What's going on? What happened? What happened in the divine tomb? What's that sound? And this pressure? Shocked voices rang out from within the divine tomb. The gods within the divine tomb also had shocked expressions on their faces as they stared intently at the main peak. BZZZ, BZZZ. At this moment, an irresistible force suddenly landed on their bodies. Everyone's bodies were sent flying out. What's going on? In an instant, over 100,000 people appeared at the entrance of the divine tombs. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. They sized up their surroundings. When they saw that everyone had been expelled, their pupils constricted. How did everyone suddenly get expelled from the divine tomb? What happened? Could it be that someone entered the main peak of the divine tomb? How is this possible? Someone obtained the inheritance within the divine tomb? Otherwise, why would everyone suddenly be expelled? At this moment, everyone was discussing in shock. Even some of the gods were staring in shock. It can't be that someone has really obtained the God-Lord's inheritance, right? If that's the case, then it's simply too terrifying. It's even more terrifying than the Dragon King. This earth is becoming more and more terrifying. The expressions of all the surrounding gods were somewhat unsightly. Now that there was a Dragon King on this tiny earth, how could they survive if terrifying experts were to be born? Chapter 1983. 1983 Ancient land reappeared. In the North Pole God Tomb, everyone has been expelled. It is suspected that someone has obtained the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord. The Eternal God Lord is a realm above the God realm. He can suppress a star field. He is definitely a star field expert. He can directly destroy a life planet. If he can obtain the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord, he will be invincible in the world. It is suspected that someone has obtained the inheritance of the God Lord. What is an Eternal God Lord? He has a lifespan of 1,000,000 years. He has an almost eternal life. He can suppress a star field. He is a true universe expert. What happened in the North Pole Divine Tomb immediately spread throughout the world. Everyone on the internet was discussing it. Earth, which had been silent for a month, was once again in an uproar because of what happened in the Divine Tomb. After all, the Divine Tomb was a place that even the Dragon King and the other gods could not enter. That was an existence of a higher level. The news quickly spread to every god. The remaining gods of the Holy Church and the Lingxiao Treasured Palace also received the news very quickly. When all the gods received the news, their expressions were a little ugly. Even the other godly state experts had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. Right now, Earth already had an existence like the Dragon King that had been suppressing the world for a lifetime. If an expert were to appear now, in the end, the unlucky ones would still be the gods. Even the true dragon sons of heaven were powerless as they looked at this news. Either we leave Earth or obtain the opportunities on Earth. Otherwise, no one knows what changes will happen to Earth. Some gods thought to themselves as they watched the changes one by one. At this moment, they had to consider the future. Whoosh! At this moment, on the Pacific Ocean, many figures were floating in the sky. Wang Xian was floating in the sky with a smile on his face. Beside him, Ao Jian and Ao Chitian were standing on the left and right. The rest of the members of the Dragon Palace did not follow them. Ao Jian, Chitian, check the surroundings and see which place is suitable to house the Dragon Palace. Wang Xian said to Ao Chitian and Ao Jian. It's the Dragon King. The two of them nodded. After the Dragon Palace is transferred here, find an opportunity to destroy the remnants of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church and get the starry sky chart from them. With the current strength of the Dragon Palace, they should be able to gain a foothold in the boundless galaxy. Wang Xian thought to himself as he quickly teleported towards Jiang City. He still had something to ask Ji Lingfei. Furthermore, he had been away for a month. He wondered if the two girls had missed him. Buzz. Jiang City has undergone earth-shattering changes. Dragon Gate Academy has expanded by more than 10 times compared to before. When Wang Xian arrived above Jiang City, he immediately noticed the changes in the entire city. It was not an exaggeration to call the current river city the most prosperous world. Longmen Academy, which had 2 gods overseeing it, was backed by the invincible strength of the Dragon King. Now, Longmen Academy was the most powerful force on Earth. Sensing that the 2 little girls were also at Longmen Academy, Wang Xian's figure flashed as he came directly to the building in the middle of Longmen Academy. Ah, little brother, you still know how to come back. Hua saw Wang Xian suddenly appearing beside them and shouted at him with obvious dissatisfaction. Bang! Little girl! Wang Xian knocked her head directly. Wah, you left for a month straight away. Now that you're back, you want to hit me? SOB, sob. Hua let out a weird cry. Wang Xian was speechless as he took out 2 serval fetuses and handed them to the 2 little girls. Hey! When the 2 girls sensed the mysterious power contained in the serval fetuses, they were slightly shocked. They immediately closed their eyes. Master! Xiao Ran and Ji Lingfei, who were at the side, greeted him respectfully. How is it? Did anything big happen recently? Wang Xian asked them with a smile as he sat on a chair inside. Master, something big has indeed happened. At the North Pole Divine Tomb, everyone who entered the Divine Tomb was expelled. Many people guessed that someone had obtained the inheritance of the Master of God. Xiao Ran frowned slightly and said, all of them were expelled. Wang Xian was slightly stunned. A hint of seriousness appeared on his face. If someone had really obtained the inheritance of the Master of God, even he would have to be more careful. After all, that person was a Master of God. It was possible for him to leave behind some extremely terrifying treasures. Teacher, I have something here too. At this moment, Ji Lingfei, who was at the side, also said with a slight frown. What is it? I'm here because I have something to ask you too. Wang Xian put the matter of the Divine Tomb aside. Even if someone really obtained the inheritance of the Master of God, it would take at least a few decades or even thousands of years for that inheritor to grow up. By then, he might have already broken through to the 6th change of the Divine Dragon Realm. A few days ago, my master sent me a message saying that he would judge me in the future. He even said that he would destroy all of us. Ji Lingfei's face was filled with worry as she continued, furthermore, they will definitely not give up on my senior brother so easily. I'm afraid that they will have other means to take revenge. Furthermore, I'm afraid that my master will personally descend here. What is your master's realm? How strong is he in the boundless galaxy? If he were to descend here, how long would it take? Wang Xian raised his eyebrows and asked consecutively. He was not afraid of the survivors of the Lingxiao treasured palace. Even if they did not seek revenge, Wang Xian was prepared to get rid of them. As far as I know, my master has already ignited 8 wisps of divine fire. He is also a giant in the boundless galaxy. If he were to descend here, he would need at least 1 to 2 years. I just don't know if my master would take this risk. Ji Lingfei replied. 8 wisps of divine fire? Wang Xian's eyes flickered. He wasn't very worried about the god of 8 wisps of divine fire. Even if he were to descend here 1 to 2 years later, he would be able to deal with it by then. At that time, it was not certain who would kill who. In fact, he might not even need the other party to descend. He might even bring Earth directly to the boundless galaxy. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the entire ground began to shake all of a sudden. It was as if a huge earthquake had occurred. Hey, what's the situation? Wang Xian was slightly stunned. He flew into the sky instantly. Xiao Ran and the rest followed behind him in astonishment. They floated in the sky above Longmen Academy. This is... What a pleasant surprise. When Wang Xian looked towards the south, a smile appeared on his face. He did not expect that a divine kingdom would appear again in the south. It was a brand new divine kingdom. In the past 10 years, many divine kingdoms and ancient lands had appeared. At that time, Wang Xian had missed out on many treasures. He did not expect that there were still divine kingdoms and ancient lands on Earth that were recovering. This was completely a gift for him. This kingdom of God belonged to the Dragon Palace. No other forces could get their hands on it. Chapter 1984. 1984 suppressed the world. Hey, what happened in the south? Did another ancient land appear? I didn't expect an ancient land to appear at this time. How many treasures does this Earth have? Quick, everyone in the North Pole Divine Tomb has been expelled. I didn't expect a divine kingdom to appear immediately. The divine kingdom that just appeared must have many treasures in it. When the ancient land in the south shook and the divine kingdom appeared, everyone quickly flew towards the south. A new divine kingdom. All the gods on Earth sensed the change in the south and revealed happy expressions. They immediately flew towards the divine kingdom in the south. Every divine kingdom that had just been unearthed must have the treasures of this god when he was alive. If this god had the power of 8 or even 9 wisps of divine fire when he was alive, the treasures inside might be a huge opportunity for their gods. Especially for the gods on Earth who had just recovered, as long as they had enough resources, they could quickly improve. The appearance of this god's kingdom might be even more precious to them than the tombs at the North and South Poles. The group of gods immediately flew towards the ancient land in the south. Let's go. We'll go too. At the same time, Wang Xian spoke to Xiao Ran and the rest in the sky above the Dragon Gate Academy. He then flew towards the divine kingdom in the south. After 2 consecutive teleportations, they soon arrived above the newly emerged ancient land. This divine kingdom is pretty big. Wang Xian looked at the divine kingdom in front of him, his eyes gleaming. This divine kingdom that had just been excavated had an area of 300 kilometers. The divine kingdom was different from the other ancient divine kingdoms. It was filled with a wild aura. In the middle of the divine kingdom was a 1,000-meter-wide golden lion statue. This seems to be the divine kingdom of the Golden Lion King. Huara and Xiaya looked at the kingdom of the Golden Lion King below and guessed doubtfully. The Golden Lion King? Wang Xian looked at the 2 little girls. The Golden Lion King is a demonic beast god. It has already ignited 8 wisps of divine fire. It is very powerful. Xia introduced it to Wang Xian. 8 wisps of divine fire? It seems like there are many good things inside. Wang Xian smiled and scanned the entire divine kingdom with his dragon eyes. There was an entrance to the divine kingdom that was completely open. With his current strength, he could only blast open an entrance from other places. The divine kingdom that had lost its god could only withstand the attacks of 2 to 3 wisps of gods. At this moment, countless figures were flying over from the surroundings. One by one, the gods had already arrived at the entrance. A newly unearthed kingdom of God would definitely drive the entire world crazy. Moreover, the kingdom of God that was unearthed was different from the tomb of the eternal God. It was not that difficult to enter. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In less than a minute, Nearly 10 gods had appeared in the surroundings. In addition, there were hundreds of thousands of people who had gathered in the surroundings. Their eyes were burning as they stared at the kingdom of God in front of them. Let's go to the entrance. Wang Xian moved and arrived at the center of the entrance of the kingdom of God. When Wang Xian was floating in the middle of the entrance, everyone was slightly shocked. Even the god's pupils contracted slightly as they stared at Wang Xian with a solemn expression. It's the Dragon King. The Dragon King is here too. The Dragon King is here. Hundreds of thousands of people looked at Wang Xian and the rest at the center of the entrance. Their eyes were sparkling. No one is allowed to enter this divine kingdom without my permission. Wang Xian glanced at the 10 deities around him and said calmly. His voice was heard by everyone instantly. Come, let's go in. After Wang Xian finished speaking, he flew straight into the divine kingdom. He ignored everyone around him. The hundreds of thousands of people around were slightly stunned when they heard the Dragon King's words. A helpless look appeared on their faces. We can only wait for the Dragon King and the rest to come out before we drink soup. Sigh, this is the world of the strong. In the past, the few major forces of the Lingxiao treasured palace monopolized these ancient lands. Now, it's the Dragon King's turn. Let's forget about it. Some people were talking helplessly. Now that the Dragon King had suppressed the world for a lifetime, the treasures that were unearthed would naturally be occupied by the Dragon King. They did not have the right to compete with him. After all, the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church had almost been destroyed. Compared to the natives on Earth, those disciples who had followed the gods to descend and the surrounding gods who had ignited their divine flames looked very embarrassed. Nowadays on Earth, other than the divine tombs, only these divine kingdoms want to obtain resources. Now that the divine kingdoms have been directly occupied by the Dragon King, all the gods looked very unhappy. Earth was very small to begin with, and there were many gods now. There were simply not enough resources to share. These divine kingdoms were the only way for them to increase their strength. Now that they were occupied by the Dragon King. As for asking them to compete with the Dragon King, they really didn't dare. Now that the Dragon King had suppressed them for an entire lifetime, even if all of them joined forces, they would just follow in the footsteps of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this time, a few other gods had arrived. Hearing the discussions around them, they frowned slightly. The 4 true dragon sons of heaven from the sacred True Dragon Gathering looked at each other and shook their heads with a frown. Everyone, as long as the Dragon King is here, any treasures on Earth have nothing to do with us. Now that the Earth has stopped in the void of the universe, entering the starry skies is undoubtedly a narrow escape. Right now, we can either risk a narrow escape or destroy the Dragon King. At this moment, a voice suddenly entered the ears of the surrounding gods. The eyes of the surrounding gods flickered. Destroy the Dragon King? With what do we use to destroy the Dragon King? Let's wait until your Lingxiao treasured palace has the strength to fight against the Holy Church. A god coldly replied in a direction. His face was gloomy, and his body moved, instantly leaving this place. The surrounding gods left the place unwillingly. Soon, all of the gods left. It seems that they are wavering. 2 figures stood in the sky 100,000 meters high and said calmly. Although they are wavering, they still have to depend on us in the end. Unless we can use our strength to fight against the Dragon King, they will not join us. Another figure said calmly. Everything depends on that Kai Yang. He has used up all the resources of our Ling Xiao and the Saint Hall and placed everything on him. I hope that he will not disappoint us. The figure next to him said expectantly. In just a few days, he has already ignited 5 wisps of divine fire. After a period of time, we will be able to take our revenge completely. The eyes of the 2 figures flashed with a cold light. They looked down at the divine kingdom with hatred in their eyes, and their figures slowly disappeared. I recommend a very good book, The Demon King of the Citteritan by Happy Airhow. It's so wonderful that you can't miss it. Chapter 1985. 1985. In 1985, the kingdom of God was suppressed for a lifetime. Daddy was really domineering just now. Without my permission, no one is allowed to enter. It's so cool. Inside the kingdom of God, Hua-Caia held Wang Xian's arms on both sides and said to him with a smile, "After suppressing the Lingxiao treasured palace and the holy church, there will naturally be some benefit." Wang Xian smiled. The Dragon Palace had suppressed the Lingxiao treasured palace and the holy church for this lifetime. During this period, the Dragon Palace would naturally take over the divine kingdom. As for the other gods, would they have any objections? So what? It was already good enough that Wang Xian didn't suppress them all. Let's go and see if there are any treasures inside. Wang Xian and the rest flew inside. All the ancient lands on Earth were huge resources to Ao Crab. He could totally devour all of them. However, Wang Xian did not do so for the time being. These ancient lands of the Divine Kingdom were a place of cultivation for the people on Earth. If Ao Crab were to devour these ancient lands of the Divine Kingdom, the cultivation speed of the people on Earth would be the same as that of the supernatural continent. Without the assistance of the Divine Kingdom, it was extremely difficult to produce a demigod powerhouse. It was different with these divine kingdoms. The Divine Kingdom was the best place for cultivation on the Transcendence continent. For the future of the people on Earth, Wang Xian thought about it and decided not to let Ao Crab devour all the divine kingdoms. "Master, have you lit the divine fire?" The 5 of them were searching for all kinds of treasures in the divine kingdom. When Xiao Ran and the rest saw Wang Xian making a move, they were shocked. "Yes." Wang Xian nodded his head faintly. In a few days, the Dragon Palace will once again stand tall in the ocean. It can be considered as the complete return of the Dragon Palace. The Dragon Palace? Xiao Ran nodded his head silently. At that time, the underwater Dragon Palace had shocked all the powerhouses in the world. Now, it was about to be shown to the world again. "Wow, Daddy, 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 Golden Lion, there's actually a golden lion in there." At this moment, Hua's excited voice came from the front. "Huh!" Wang Xian flew over and looked at the golden lion statue in the center of the kingdom of God. As expected, there were 2 mighty golden lions there. The 2 golden lions were about 10 meters in size. Their golden fur looked extremely mighty. Hey! A golden lion that has already become a god. Could it be the fallen golden lion king? Wang Xian flew over and sized them up. "Daddy, it's not that golden lion king. It should be his descendants that have used a special method to keep them alive. These 2 golden lions are so cool. They are simply too cool." Hua and Sia stared at the 2 golden lions with sparkling eyes. However, they did not dare to go over. After all, they were 2 golden lions that had lit up a wisp of divine fire. Their attacks were extremely ferocious. Roar! Roar! The 2 golden lions stared at Wang Xian and the rest with a curious and cold gaze. They grinned and roared. "They are indeed powerful. If you like them, let them be your mount." Wang Xian looked at the 2 golden lions and said with a smile. At the same time, the dragon's might emitted from his body directly covered the 2 golden lions. Roar! 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 The 2 golden lions felt the dragon's might from Wang Xian and their eyes instantly revealed an extremely fearful expression. They laid on the ground and stared at Wang Xian with trembling eyes. "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Come, I'll give you delicious food." Hua and Sia saw this scene and immediately took out some food. She walked to the 2 golden lions and handed it to them. "Roar, roar, don't kill us." The 2 golden lions looked at Hua and Sia. Their bodies shrunk to only 1 meter in size. "Follow us and we won't bully you. No one will dare to bully you in the future. How about it?" Hua took the food and placed it beside them. Roar! The 2 golden lions looked at Wang Xian in fear. They bent down towards Hua and Sia to show their submission. "Wow, you're so obedient. That's great. I'll call you gold and gold coins from now on." "Hee hee," Hua said excitedly. The 2 golden lions lay there speechless. "Let's go. We will take all the treasures in the divine kingdom." Wang Xian walked over and ordered the 2 golden lions. Now that he had ignited the divine fire, as one of the top divine dragons in the universe, even if the golden lions were not from the water tribe, they were still unable to resist under his pressure. This was also the reason why the two golden lions were willing to submit to the two little girls. Ho ho, yes. The two golden lions spoke to Wang Xian in awe and stood up slowly. You too, grow bigger and bring us along. Hua patted the head of the golden lion and spoke to them. Ho ho. The two golden lions nodded and returned to their original size of 10 meters. They didn't forget to eat the food that Hua had given them. Roar. The two little girls rode on the golden lion. They leaped into the air, causing the two little girls to cheer. A god-level mount was not something that an ordinary god could obtain. 2 hours later, Wang Xian and the rest searched the entire kingdom of God and kept all the valuable items. Let's go, gold coins. Hua sat on the golden lions and said loudly while stroking their fur excitedly. Roar. The two lions roared and flew out of the divine kingdom while exuding a powerful aura. A majestic roar resounded across the entire sky. When they flew out, there were already millions of people gathered outside the divine kingdom. Although because of the Dragon King's order, no one dared to enter, they were still waiting. When the Dragon King came out, they could have some soup. When they saw two divine beasts emitting divine might fly out from inside, they were shocked. Oh my god, that's a golden lion, it's a divine beast that ignited the divine fire. Look at them, on top of them are the Dragon King's two daughters. Good heavens, the two divine beasts have become the Dragon King's daughters' mount. Hiss, in just 2 short hours, the Dragon King and the others have subdued 2 divine beasts. These are divine beast. Shocked voices rang out one after another as everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. The Dragon King had actually obtained 2 divine beasts in the ancient land. Who wouldn't be tempted? Everyone can enter the divine kingdom. There are still some resources inside. At this moment, the Dragon King's voice rang out. Everyone looked towards the exit and saw that the Dragon King and the others had also flown out. There are still some resources inside. Let's go in. Let's quickly enter. There are some things that the Dragon King doesn't like, but they are treasures to us. Quick, quick. Everyone was shocked that the Dragon King had obtained 2 divine beast mounts and was frantically rushing into the ancient land. Chapter 1986. 1986. In 1986, the Dragon Palace descended. Extra, the ancient land has appeared once again. The Dragon King's words have intimidated all the gods. 2 hours later, the Dragon King subdued 2 divine beasts, the golden lions, and left. The Dragon King's 2 daughters rode on 2 divine beasts, the golden lions. It was simply too cool. The Dragon King has obtained 2 divine beasts that have ignited divine flames in the ancient land. The Dragon King's power has been strengthened once again. Less than a day after the ancient land was born, the entire world was once again in an uproar. In particular, the appearance of the 2 divine beasts, the golden lions, caused everyone's faces to reveal looks of envy and shock. These were 2 divine beasts at the level of gods. They had actually become the Dragon King's daughters' mounts. Using divine beasts as mounts, what kind of concept was this? In the entire earth, no one could be as mighty as the Dragon King. The news caused a huge shock. Especially when the gods saw this news, their expressions became even more unsightly. 2 divine beast mounts. If they could enter the divine kingdom, these 2 divine beasts might be tamed by them. These were 2 divine beast mount. All the gods felt deep jealousy. Once, a divine beast-level pet cub could cause 2 powerful forces to fight over it. Now, they also wanted to fight over it. If the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church really have a way to fight the Dragon King, it's not impossible to join. Sometimes, some risks have to be taken. Some gods looked at the information on the internet with cold eyes. No one who could become a god was indecisive. They all had their own boldness. If they were really forced to a certain extent, they would be crazier than anyone else. Everything was for the sake of becoming stronger. The current gods were already forced to the edge of a cliff. If it was the soaring heavens treasured palace and the Holy Church suppressing the current life, they might choose to endure for a period of time. After all, the 2 major forces would bring Earth into the boundless star field. Now that Earth was docked in the void, there was no starry sky map and no hope of improvement. In the situation where there was no way forward, They could only fight to the death. 2 divine beasts. Back then, we collected more than a dozen divine kingdoms, but we didn't get any treasures like divine beast. At the beginning, only some weak divine kingdoms were unearthed. If there were more divine kingdoms to come, they wouldn't be any worse than the Golden Lion's divine kingdom. Damn Dragon King, if it weren't for them, all the treasures would be ours. When we go back, we will definitely be able to ignite 1 or 2 wisps of divine fire. At this moment, in the sacred hall, the Lingxiao treasured palace and the other gods of the sacred hall revealed furious expressions when they heard the news. All of this originally belonged to them. Now, they could only hide here. Furious and unwilling. Let's wait a little longer. 10 days at most, 10 days at most. Yuan Kuei took a deep breath at the side. A terrifying killing intent shot out from his eyes. Dragon King. In the villa in Jiang City, Ao Jian and Ao Chitian returned not long after Wang Xian and the rest had returned. How is it? Have you found a suitable place? Wang Xian immediately asked them. Dragon King, we have found 3 places that are more suitable for the Dragon Palace. Ao Jian nodded. Currently, the sea-pacifying needles in our Dragon Palace are up to 10,000 meters tall. There are only a dozen or so places in the ocean that are more than 10,000 meters deep. We will choose 3 good locations from these dozen or so places. We will wait for your final decision, Dragon King. All right, let's go and take a look. Wang Xian nodded his head. With a shift of his body, he teleported towards the depths of the ocean. The Earth had undergone a change. The entire Earth had expanded by 4 to 5 times. The sea area that was originally thousands of meters deep and thousands of meters deep had also increased by a few times. The deepest part of the ocean had already reached about 20,000 meters. It could totally house the underwater Dragon Palace. This place is not bad. However, the area is not big enough. We need to modify it at the bottom of the ocean. Wang Xian chose one of the 3 locations. It was located in the middle of the ocean and there was a rather big island beside it. Call Prime Minister Gui over. Ask him to modify the surroundings. After that, we will transfer the Dragon Palace over immediately. Wang Xian instructed them once again. It's the Dragon King. The 2 of them nodded and took action immediately. Daddy, where is the Dragon Palace now? Is it fun? When Wang Xian returned, the 2 little girls couldn't help but ask curiously. Xiao Ran, Ji Lingfei, and the rest were also filled with curiosity. You will know when the time comes. Wang Xian smiled mysteriously and didn't explain too much to them. This made the 2 little girls' faces filled with displeasure. They snorted coldly as they plucked the fur of the gold coins and gold pieces. This made the 2 golden lions want to cry but have no tears. 2 weeks passed very quickly. When Wang Xian received the news from the members of the Dragon Palace, a smile appeared on his face. The matter regarding the ocean had been settled. Next, it was time to transfer the Dragon Palace over. Xiao Ran announced that the Ocean Dragon Palace has returned. Also, announced that all the gods can become external disciples of the Dragon Palace. Wang Xian's eyes flickered as he gave an order to Xiao Ran. Huh! Xiao Ran was slightly stunned. He looked at his master in astonishment. Yes, master. He didn't ask further and nodded immediately. The Dragon Palace will be transferred to Earth. Next, we will destroy the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church. We will find the starry sky map and make Earth move toward the boundless galaxy once again. Wang Xian's eyes were sparkling. Next, he had to make plans for the future. Apart from destroying the Holy Church and the Lingxiao treasured palace, he was also planning to recruit the gods. Recruiting them was to prepare for Earth to enter the boundless galaxy. There was no harm in having more gods under his command. However, Wang Xian was not planning to recruit the gods into the Dragon Palace. In the future, he might arrange for these gods to be placed at the Longmen Academy. To resist foreign aggression, one must first settle down. Before Earth entered the boundless galaxy, Wang Xian had to ensure that there were no problems within Earth. You 2 girls, don't you want to know what the Dragon Palace looks like? Let's go, I'll bring you to take a look. The corners of Wang Xian's mouth curled up slightly as he said to Hua Erse. All right, Let's ride Gold Coin and the rest." The two girls' eyes lit up as they said excitedly, "Let's go." Wang Xian nodded and flew directly toward the center of the ocean. What's that? When they arrived at the center of the ocean, 2,000 disciples of the Dragon Defense Division were standing on the surface of the ocean. They formed a circle within a radius of 1,000 kilometers. They were holding tridents in their hands, and their bodies were emitting a blue glow. They exuded a powerful dignity. Dragon King, Prime Minister Ao Yecha and a group of godly state experts of the Dragon Palace were standing in front of them. When they saw Wang Xian, they bowed respectfully. Chapter 1987. 1987. The Dragon Palace descended in 1987. "Are you all ready?" Wang Xian looked at the members of the Dragon Palace and said faintly to them, "Dragon King, everything is ready." Prime Minister Gui bowed and said, "All right, since that's the case, let the Dragon Palace descend." As Wang Xian spoke, he moved and immediately arrived at the center of the Dragon Defense Division. He extended his arm slightly toward the sky. Behind him, Hua Asir looked at this scene with a face full of curiosity. Buzz. Rumble. At this moment, a gigantic object that blotted out the sun appeared out of thin air above Wang Xian. The vast and majestic Dragon Palace slowly emerged. 9-colored light enveloped it. When it was revealed in this space, the entire world shook. It covered an area of more than 1,000 kilometers and was no smaller than the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. It looked even more majestic than the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. The 10,000-meter-long ocean-pacifying divine needle stood in the center of the Dragon Palace. The divine dragon sat on it, and the words ocean-pacifying divine needle flickered with golden light. Even if it was a few thousand kilometers, it could still be seen clearly. Wow! Hua and Seer were astonished. They raised their heads and looked at the majestic Dragon Palace. "Greetings, Dragon King." At this moment, the members of the Dragon Palace immediately knelt down on one knee and shouted loudly. Their voices were earth-shattering. Whoosh! Wang Xian waved his arm gently and arrived directly above the Dragon Palace. "The Dragon Palace shall be suppressed for an entire lifetime." Wang Xian looked down at the Dragon Palace beneath him. He looked down at everything around him and shouted in a deep voice. A voice spread across the entire earth. "The Dragon Palace shall be suppressed for an entire lifetime." This is the voice of the Dragon King. It's the voice of the Dragon King. When everyone heard these words, their faces were slightly shocked. They quickly looked towards the ocean. What is that? What is that? Oh my God, is that the Dragon Palace? The Dragon King's Dragon Palace? More than 10 years ago, the Dragon King's Dragon Palace was located at the bottom of the ocean and shocked the world. Now, the Dragon Palace is even more shocking. When everyone saw the enormous Dragon Palace near the ocean, they were shocked. At this moment, the gods also looked toward the ocean. When they saw the majestic Dragon Palace, their pupils constricted again. Look on the internet. The Dragon King's disciple, Dean Xiao, has posted a message. He said that the Dragon King is recruiting all the gods. The gods can become external disciples of the Dragon Palace. This is a big deal. The Dragon King is openly recruiting underlings, and only godly state underlings. The Dragon King is too domineering. He made all the gods become external disciples of the Dragon Palace. When everyone was shocked by the Dragon King's voice, someone on the internet quickly found the message that the Dean of the Dragon Gate Academy, Xiao Ran, had just posted. When they saw the content of the message, they were all shocked. The Dragon King actually announced that the gods could join the Dragon Palace and become external disciples of the Dragon Palace. This was too domineering. He made the gods external members of the Dragon Palace. Perhaps on Earth, only the Dragon King had the strength to say this. The Dragon King and the Dragon Palace indeed had the qualifications. Becoming an external disciple of the Dragon Palace, this Dragon King is somewhat insincere. The gods quickly received this news, and their expressions became slightly unsightly. After all, they were also gods who had ignited the divine fire. If we don't join the Dragon Palace, will the Dragon King destroy us? Some gods' eyes flickered, and they were extremely gloomy. There were also some gods who were considering whether or not they should ask the Dragon King for some information. Boom. 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 At this moment, something unexpected happened again. In the middle of the current continent, the earthquake-like situation happened again. A huge divine kingdom was slowly unearthed. The ancient land, which covered an area of 200 to 300 kilometers, once again shook the entire world. Hey! On the ocean, Wang Xian was floating above the Dragon Palace. When he sensed the vibration coming from the center of the continent, he was slightly stunned. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face. Is this a congratulation for the arrival of the Dragon Palace? He smiled faintly and looked at the leaders of the Dragon Palace. A new divine kingdom has appeared at the center of the continent. Bring all the valuable items here, Wang Xian said to the leaders of the Dragon Palace. Keek, Dragon King, leave it to us. I'll go. Mo Sha and Bhe looked in the direction of the continent. Their eyes were sparkling. Chitian, Xingmu, bring Bhe, Mo Sha, and the others with you. Prime Minister Gui looked at Ao Chitian and Ao Xingmu and ordered. Yes, Prime Minister Gui, Ao Chitian, Ao Xingmu, and the others nodded. Together with Bhe, Mo Sha, and the other 2 members of the Mad Dragon Seed, they immediately flew toward the direction of the continent. There were 6 gods in total. Apart from Bhe, Mo Sha, and the others, who could only fight against 2 wisps of divine fire, Ao Chitian and the others could fight against 4 wisps of divine fire. This strength was enough to suppress everything. Perhaps, only Yuan Kuei from the Lingxiao Treasured Palace was slightly stronger than them. However, the Lingxiao Treasured Palace did not dare to come and seek death. Crash! Wang Xian's arm slowly swung downwards. The gigantic Dragon Palace fell towards the bottom of the sea. Daddy, bring us to the Dragon Palace to take a look. Hua Ersea's excited voice rang out. Wang Xian nodded his head. At the same time, when another divine kingdom was unearthed, the attention of the entire world shifted from the Dragon Palace to the ancient land. Countless people surged towards the ancient land. In the previous ancient land, even if the Dragon King was the first to enter and take away the most precious treasures, the things that were left behind still drove them crazy. Now, they had to rush over quickly. Even if they could get some soup, it would still be good. The gods were also very unwilling. They quickly flew towards the divine kingdom. The 2 gods closest to the entrance saw it and did not hesitate at all. They directly flew inside. If the Dragon King came again, they might not be able to enter. Peng. However, just as the 2 gods were about to enter the divine kingdom, an enormous ocean-pacifying needle landed in front of them, causing their expressions to instantly change. Keek, our Dragon Palace has suppressed this world for a lifetime, so all the treasures naturally belong to us. You are not allowed to enter, otherwise, die. Bhe's gaze swept past the 2 gods at the entrance, then arrogantly swept past the surrounding gods. The corners of his lips curled up as he said coldly. When the 2 gods saw the ocean-pacifying divine needle in front of them, they looked at the Dragon King's subordinates in the sky, and their expressions were incomparably ugly as they retreated. The experts of the Dragon Palace have arrived. Let's prepare to drink soup. Just as the Dragon King said, the Dragon Palace will suppress this world for an entire lifetime. All the treasures will belong to them. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they took a deep breath and slowly spoke. No one had any objection to the Dragon Palace taking over this ancient land again. Good, good, this ancient land appeared at the right time. I didn't expect that even God would help us. Ha ha ha. However, at this moment, a few figures in a place that was hundreds of thousands of meters away from this ancient land were covered in flames, and their faces were filled with excitement and malevolence. Chapter 1988. 1988, suppressing the members of the Dragon Palace. Only 6 members of the Dragon Palace have arrived. This is the time for us to act. As long as we can easily suppress them, the other gods will naturally know what to do. After the Dragon King occupied the ancient lands of the Divine Kingdom twice in a row, the other gods have long been dissatisfied. Just now, the Dragon Palace actually announced that the gods can join the Dragon Palace. However, the Dragon King is too arrogant. He actually wants the gods to become external disciples of the Dragon Palace. The Dragon King is too arrogant. He completely doesn't put the gods in his eyes. You have to know that this group of gods may have once ignited 7, 8, or even 9 wisps of divine fire. They are so arrogant. How could they join a god faction with the highest 6 wisps of divine fire? Moreover, they are only external members. This is simply an insult to them. Among the 7 figures shrouded in flames, 6 of them looked down with hatred in their eyes. Didn't the Dragon King's dragon palace descend into the ocean? Why don't you just let me say it? I'll go and destroy the entire nest of the Dragon King. There's no need to go through so much trouble. The fiery red figure in the middle of the group smirked as he listened to the words of the people around him. A lazy look appeared on his face as he said indifferently, "We absolutely cannot take any risks before we have 100% confidence." Yuan Kuei looked at the young man beside him and said with a solemn expression, I have almost ignited 7 wisps of divine fire. With the weapons and battle experience in my hands, I can contend against 7 wisps of divine fire. Isn't this a 100% confidence? The young man looked at Yuan Kuei and snorted lightly. This time, we can't take the slightest risk. If we fail, we won't have a chance to turn things around. I'll only act when I have 100% confidence. The strength of the subordinates of the Dragon Palace is extraordinary. I'll only be at ease if I can rope in a group of true dragon sons of heaven and gods. Yuan Kuei's face was gloomy. With me around, you can rest assured. The young man smiled and looked down. When they come out, I'll make my move and show you my strength. Yuan Kuei and the others looked at him and nodded heavily. They looked down at the Divine Kingdom and waited quietly. I wonder what treasures the Dragon King's subordinates will get this time. This ancient land seems to be bigger than the one 10 days ago. There might be more treasures in it. Look at the internet. Someone took a picture of the Dragon King's dragon palace on the internet. My God, it's as big as the skyscraping treasured palace, and it looks even more majestic. There seem to be a lot of people in the Dragon Palace. Those are all the strength of the Dragon King. With the current power of the Dragon King, he can really be said to be invincible in the world. Even the recruitment of the gods this time is only to make them external members of the Dragon Palace. It's too domineering. Only the Dragon Palace can make the gods external members of the Dragon Palace. The more the ancient lands of the Divine Kingdom appear, the stronger the forces of the Dragon King and the Dragon Palace will be. It's hard to imagine what other forces can contend with the Dragon Palace. To contend with the Dragon King, one must obtain the inheritance of the eternal God in the divine tomb. As time passed, more and more people gathered around the ancient lands of the Divine Kingdom. Soon, there were several million people. Because of the orders of the 8 points, no one dared to enter. Even some gods hid in the surroundings. The strength of the Dragon King and the Dragon Palace was too strong, especially just now, when the Dragon Palace descended into the ocean. Its mighty power caused many people to be shocked. Now, even the gods were shrouded in the light of the Dragon King. They might even become the Dragon King's subordinates. In the sky, 7 figures listened to the discussions coming from below. Their eyes were cold as they waited. They would make the world tremble again. Time gradually passed, and more people gathered around the Divine Kingdom. Everyone was waiting for the members of the Dragon Palace to come out so that they could enter. 7 to 8 hours passed, but the people around did not lose their patience. They were still waiting. As expected of the Divine Kingdom of the 8 wisps of divine fire God. There are so many treasures inside. At this moment, the excited voices of the 8-limbed Mo Sha and the others came from the Divine Kingdom. 6 figures slowly appeared at the entrance of the Divine Kingdom. The rest can enter. If they are lucky, they might be able to obtain the method of becoming a god left behind by the god inside. Mo Sha and the others looked at the millions of people gathered around them. They raised their heads slightly and spoke to them. What? The method of becoming a god? The method of becoming a god. Could it be the inheritance of the god's cultivation? At this moment, when everyone heard Mo Sha's words, their faces revealed an excited expression. Their eyes were burning as they stared at the divine kingdom. Hihi, all of you took away all the treasures and resources. You only left behind some cultivation methods. Your dragon palace really deserves to be destroyed. Just as everyone was going crazy, a voice suddenly sounded in the sky. When they heard this voice, the faces of the millions of people around them revealed shocked expressions. Some of the gods hidden in the surroundings were also slightly shocked and immediately looked towards the sky. Which reckless thing dares to challenge the dignity of our dragon palace? Hearing the words coming from the sky, Bhe and the others were stunned and stared at the sky with their blood-red eyes. Ha ha ha, the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace will suppress all of you for a lifetime? Today, I will suppress all of you. At this moment, a terrifying flame covered Bhe and Ao Xingmu from the sky. The flame was like lava. Boom. In an instant, a pillar of fire rose around the eight-headed demon, sealing them completely. Today, I will kill all of you, and then I will destroy your Dragon King. An extremely arrogant voice continued to come from the sky. Oh no. Not good, the opponent is very strong. At this moment, when Ao Xingmu and Ao Chitian sensed the flames around them and the flame lava in the sky, their expressions changed drastically, and a hint of shock appeared in their eyes. Break for me. Ao Chitian let out a furious roar. The blood-red chains wrapped around the sea-pacifying divine needle and directly attacked the sky. Bang! However, when the sea-pacifying divine needle fell into the flame lava, it was actually slowly melted. A flame followed the chains and attacked Ao Chitian. The opponent is very strong. Run! Ao Xingmu saw this scene and immediately shouted with a shocked expression. Run! When the eight-headed spirit and Mo Sho saw this scene, their hearts beat even faster. They let out a sharp sound and fled into the distance. Boom! However, in front of a god who could almost fight against 7 wisps of divine fire, they could not escape at all with their strength. The terrifying flames fell directly on their bodies. Chapter 1989. 1989 Dragon Extermination Palace Operation. RRR, you guys, in the future, I will pull your tendons and skin you. Just you wait, RRR. In front of the ancient land of the Divine Kingdom, screams of extreme pain could be heard from the area covered by the flames. Roar roar. In the center of the flames, the screams of Ao Chitian and the others could be heard. The millions of people around were completely dumbfounded when they saw this scene. What was going on? Suddenly, a voice sounded, followed by flames that directly covered the experts of the Dragon Palace. The few godly state experts who had followed the Dragon King to destroy the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Templar Hall screamed in pain. Someone actually attacked the Dragon King's subordinates and the members of the Dragon Palace. Who is it? Oh my god, he killed all the experts of the Dragon Palace with one move. Who is he? Is he a hidden expert of the Lingxiao treasured palace of the Sacred Hall? The millions of people around looked at the sky in shock. Hihi, a bunch of dying things. How dare you shout? I can easily kill all of you. The arrogant voice sounded again, and 7 figures slowly appeared in everyone's sight. It's the people from the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Sacred Hall. Who's that youth in the middle? How can he be so terrifying? Beside that youth is the strongest person from the Lingxiao treasured palace, the Yuan Kuei god. When the surrounding people saw the figures one by one, shock appeared on their faces. They widened their eyes and looked up in shock. The Lingxiao treasured palace and the Sacred Hall are going to take revenge, and it's going to be so fierce. Some people murmured as they watched this scene in shock. Boom! At this moment, the young man in the middle of the sky waved his arm, and the flames below suddenly disappeared. Bang, bang, bang. The flames disappeared, and the corpses fell directly to the ground. 6 corpses, not a single one less. Hiss. Seeing these corpses, everyone had shocked expressions on their faces. I remember that the devil monkey and the plant god were also relatively strong among the Dragon King's subordinate. Apart from that crab, the devil monkey god and the plant god were the strongest. Now, they were killed in an instant. Looking at the corpses on the ground, the bodies of millions of people trembled in shock. A young god had actually destroyed 6 powerful subordinates of the Dragon Palace with a wave of his hand. The Dragon King dared to destroy our Lingxiao treasured palace and kill the god of our Lingxiao treasured palace. Within 3 days, we will destroy his dragon palace and take his head. Yuan Kuei stared coldly at the 6 corpses on the ground with a bloodthirsty look on his face. It's just a small Dragon King. With me, I can easily kill him, the young man beside him said indifferently. As he spoke, he waved his arm, and the interspatial rings on Ao Chitian's and the others' bodies were directly put into his bag. Let's go. The corners of Yuan Kuei's mouth curled up slightly, and he shouted softly. Whoosh. The group of people directly left, leaving behind a group of more than 1 million people with shocked faces. Whoosh. Seeing the powerhouses of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall leave, everyone took a deep breath. Do they really have the strength to fight against the Dragon King? Some people murmured and looked at the corpses on the ground in a daze. Soon, the noise and shaking sound reverberated through the entire sky and soon spread across the entire internet and the entire world. Looking at the corpses of the 6 godly state experts of the Dragon Palace on the internet, everyone widened their eyes in shock. The Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church still had their trump cards. Perhaps, they could really fight against the Dragon King. This was the thought in everyone's mind. Buzz. At this moment, Wang Xian, who was strolling around the Dragon Palace with the 2 girls, had already sensed it the moment Ao Chitian, Ao Xingmu, and the rest died. His expression changed slightly. Ao he. Wang Xian shouted with a solemn face and immediately shouted. Dragon King. Ao he, who was dressed in black armor, flew over and bowed slightly. What happened? Hua Asir looked at Wang Xian, whose expression had changed. She asked curiously. Ao Chitian, Ao Xingmu, and the rest have fallen. Bring the soul-returning wood with you. Let's see if they have fallen in the divine kingdom or if it was someone else who did it. Wang Xian gave an order to Ao he. Ao Chitian and the rest are dead. A hint of blood flashed across Ao his eyes. He nodded immediately. It's the Dragon King. I'll head over immediately. Buzz. After he finished speaking, his figure disappeared instantly. Ao Chitian, Uncle Ao Xingmu, and the rest have fallen? Hua Asir also looked at Wang Xian with an awe-inspiring expression. Yes. With their current strength, they can fight against a god with 4 wisps of divine fire. They shouldn't have fallen in the divine kingdom. Someone might have made a move. Wang Xian's eyes were flashing with a cold glint. To dare to kill the god of the Dragon Palace and be able to kill Ao Chitian and the other 3, it was definitely not simple. An ordinary god could not do it at all. At the very least, he could light up 5 wisps of divine fire and above. Who is courting death? Timpate. Hua Asir revealed an angry expression when she heard Wang Xian's words. It's all right. We will know the news soon. Wang Xian's eyes were gleaming coldly. He wanted to see who was the one who made the move. We will deal with the top-notch experts under the Dragon King. The rest will be left to you. You have seen our strength. This is your last chance. However, at this moment, the black-robed figure appeared once again at the location of the True Dragon Union. He spoke to the 4 true dragon sons of heaven in front of him calmly. If you have the strength to destroy the Dragon King, why did you call for us? A young man looked at the black figure in front of him indifferently and knocked on the table lightly. This is the last chance for the soaring heavens treasured palace and the sacred hall. Even if we are confident, we still have to make sure that there are no mistakes. Joining us is the best choice for all of you. I don't think that all of you want to become external members of the Dragon Palace. Here, Black Robe's mocking voice sounded. The 4 from the sacred True Dragon gathering looked at each other with shining eyes. We will give you an answer tomorrow, the 4 true dragon sons of heaven said lightly. We welcome all of you to the sacred hall tomorrow. A smile appeared on the black-robed middle-aged man's face and disappeared instantly. This is an opportunity for us. Watching the black-robed middle-aged man leave, a young man looked at the other 3. The conditions given by the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall are not bad. They can't let us become external members of the Dragon Palace. This Dragon King is really laughable, a young man said coldly. It is indeed laughable. As the son of heaven of a true dragon who did not ignite the divine fire, he still wants us to bow down to him. He is extremely stupid. Another youth said coldly. The four of them conversed and had already made a decision in their hearts. Soon, in less than 5 hours, the gods received invitations from the Saint Hall and the Lingxiao treasured palace again. This time, when they saw that they could easily kill the experts under the Dragon King, the gods began to move. Chapter 1990. 1990. In 1990, the gods united. Dragon King, I have received news that it was the powerhouses from the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church who destroyed Ao Chitian and the rest. Furthermore, they once declared that they would destroy our dragon palace within 3 days. Dragon King, do you want me to go to the Holy Church and destroy them immediately? As night fell, Ao Crab returned from the dragon palace in the depths of the ocean to report. Is it the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church? Was it Yuan Kuei who did it? Wang Xian sat on the dragon throne in front of the Dragon King Palace and looked down as he asked. Below, the subordinates of the Dragon Palace and the godly state experts were standing respectfully below. No, it was a young god. At that time, that young man killed Ao Chitian's leaders with just one move. That young god should be more powerful than Yuan Kuei. According to my guess, the other party must have ignited at least 6 wisps of divine fire or even more. Ao, he reported with a cold expression. Dragon King, as long as you give the order, we will head to the sacred hall immediately and destroy them completely. Prime Minister Gui immediately requested. Since they are courting death, we will fulfill their wish. Wang Xian's eyes were flashing with a cold glint. He had initially thought that after the arrival of the Dragon Palace, they would be completely exterminated. However, he did not expect that the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church would have such strong people. Since that was the case, he would not spare any of them. Wang Xian stood up slowly and swept his gaze across the subordinates of the Dragon Palace. After killing more than 20 strong people from the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church, and obtaining a bunch of fruits after the upgrade of the Dragon Palace, the Dragon Palace had an additional 10 wild dragon species. Apart from that, Duan Jinming and the former clan leader of the Fire Hammer clan had also ignited the divine fire. After Ao Crab had become the devouring dragon, his entire body had undergone a huge change. At the same time, he had awakened the darkness attribute. After devouring more than a dozen divine kingdoms, he had already ignited 6 wisps of divine fire. With Ao Crab's current strength, he could definitely fight 2 levels above Wang Xian. His strength was still much stronger than Wang Xian. Regardless of whether it was the god with 6 wisps of divine fire or the god with 7 wisps of divine fire, they were all going to die this time. Master, Xiao Ran is here to pay his respect. At this moment, Xiao Ran's voice suddenly came from outside. Huh! Wang Xian looked at the sky and gestured to Prime Minister Gui. Prime Minister Gui nodded and immediately flew out to bring Xiao Ran, Ji Lingfei, and another young man over. Damn, is this the Dragon Palace? It's too domineering. The young man following Xiao Ran looked around in shock. When he entered the Dragon King Palace, his heart trembled slightly. He looked at the Dragon King on the huge dragon throne and the ancestral tree behind the dragon throne. He then looked at the people in the Dragon King Palace. When he felt the terrifying pressure from Ao Crab, Ao Yarrow, and Ao Jian, his face changed slightly. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. At the same time, he suddenly felt extremely fortunate. Fortunately, I made a wise choice. The Dragon King's subordinates are far more than what they appear on the surface. FUCK, the last time when the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church were destroyed, the Dragon King seemed to have said that all the powerful figures of the Dragon Palace were here. Now it seems that at most half of them went last time. Dragon King, you're really too shameless. He kept complaining in his heart, but he forced a smile on his face. He kept nodding at Prime Minister Ao Crab Turtle and the others in a flattering manner. Master, Xiao Ran and Ji Lingfei looked around and were equally shocked. They bowed to Wang Xian. Xiao Ran, what's the matter? Wang Xian looked at them in puzzlement. Master, this is the god of the divine peak of the Hua Shan celestial race. He told me some news about the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Holy Church just now. I will inform Master immediately. Xiao Ran pointed at the young man beside him and said to Wang Xian. Hello, Dragon King. Shun Feng bowed to Wang Xian with a smile on his face. It's you. What's the matter? Wang Xian was naturally very familiar with the young man below and asked indifferently. This Dragon King. Shun Feng smiled and said, recently, some powerhouses from the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church have come to look for me. They want me to join them to deal with you, Dragon King of the Dragon Palace. Of course, I, Shun Feng, will not join them, so I rejected them decisively. Just now, they invited me again and said that many gods have joined them and are ready to destroy you, Dragon King of the Dragon Palace, in 3 days. At that time, I said that I would think about it. Now, I came to report to you immediately. Hehe, speaking of which, I, Shun Feng, have never admired anyone in my life except you, Dragon King. You have a heroic figure. To be able to reach this stage on this lawless earth, I, the Divine Peak, am practically prostrating myself. All this while, I, the Divine Peak, have wanted to follow you, Dragon King. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance. As he talked about the information one by one, he started to spout non-stop. What did he mean by I look up to you like a torrential river? All right. Wang Xian interrupted this fellow's series of flattery and shook his head speechlessly. He. When Shun Feng heard his words, he smiled and shut his mouth. Wang Xian slowly closed his eyes and sensed the information of the true dragon's son of heaven one by one. Looks like they are all courting death. As Wang Xian sensed the information one by one, a cold expression appeared on his face. He didn't feel the messages of the true dragon's son of heaven all the time. 9 of the true dragon's son of heaven and 1 of the true dragon's son of heaven were killed by Wang Xian. There were still 8 of them left. Among them, when Wang Xian ignited the divine fire on the Transcendence continent, the demonic dragon's son of heaven and the earth son of heaven charged into the vast starry sky. At that time, Wang Xian couldn't sense them because they were too far away. Therefore, he couldn't stop them from leaving. When he returned to Earth, the 2 of them were already in the vast starry sky. For this reason, Wang Xian hesitated for a moment and didn't call them back. It could be considered as leaving a seed behind. There were also 6 true dragons sons of heaven. They were all on Earth and had already accepted the invitation from the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church. It shouldn't be just the 6 true dragon sons of heaven who joined the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church. The other nearly 10 gods should have joined too. I originally wanted to subdue them. This is good too. I'll turn them all into resources. The corners of Wang Xian's mouth curled up slightly. His eyes revealed a sinister look. We'll wait here for them to attack us. It just so happens that everything that needs to be cleaned up has been cleaned up. Wang Xian sat down slowly. He still didn't know how many gods had joined the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Holy Church. If he were to go over, he would instead alert the enemy. Since that was the case, they would just treat it as them coming. Destroy the Dragon Palace within 3 days? He was waiting for them here. At the lower position, Shun Feng could not help but shiver when he saw the expression on Wang Xian's face. What bad idea does this Dragon King have? He is really bad. Chapter 1991. 1991 World 1991 focused on the first wave of attacks. What's going on? It's been more than 10 hours, and there's still no movement from the Dragon King? Could it be that he's afraid of that powerhouse? When the Dragon King led a group of powerhouses to attack the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Sacred Hall, he said that this was all of his strength. And today, all the powerhouses killed by the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Sacred Hall are top-notch powerhouses under the Dragon King. The Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Sacred Hall dare to take revenge on the Dragon King at this time. They dare to say that they want to kill the Dragon King within 3 days. They definitely have the confidence. Even the Dragon King might be afraid of them. 6 gods were killed in an instant, and all of them are the elites under the Dragon King. This time, the Dragon King might really be doomed. After all, they are the gods that descended back then. They still have many incredible trump cards. It had been more than 10 hours since Ao Chitian and the others were killed, and the entire internet was in an uproar. Even in the middle of the night, there were still hundreds of millions of people discussing the Dragon King and the Lingxiao treasured palace's sacred hall. The Dragon King did not make any sound for more than 10 hours after the powerful experts of the Lingxiao treasured palace's sacred hall were killed, which made many people think that the Dragon King might be afraid of the other party's strength. It made sense. The other party had killed 6 top-tier gods of the Dragon Palace in one move. The only one who could fight against that terrifying young god was probably the Dragon King's crab subordinate. However, it was still unknown whether that crab god was a match for that young god. The Dragon Palace was completely silent. There was no movement at all, which made many people guess all kinds of possibilities. Lord Luke Owen, Lord Yuan Kuei, Lord Scarlet's son, a god has arrived. The night passed quickly. The sun rose and shone on the Holy Church. The entire Holy Church was emitting a bright divine light. Inside the Holy Church, a middle-aged man respectfully entered and reported. "Invite that person in." Luke Owen heard his subordinate's report, and the corners of his mouth slightly curled up as he said to him, "Yes, sir." The middle-aged man nodded. Very quickly, a middle-aged man slowly walked in. The middle-aged man carried a large golden saber on his back, and his entire person gave off a terrifying aura. "Welcome this brother to join our holy church and the soaring heavens treasured palace." Yuan Kuei and the others stood up with smiles on their faces as they spoke to the middle-aged man. "Remember your conditions." The middle-aged man looked at them and said indifferently, "Don't worry. We can swear a blood oath and make a contract. Even the lords of our boundless star field can guarantee it." Yuan Kuei nodded at the middle-aged man. "Please sit down, brother. We'll wait for the others." Luke Owen had a trace of a smile on his face as he gestured to the middle-aged man. "All right, Dragon King, damn it." The middle-aged man nodded and coldly said a few words before sitting down at the side. Soon, in less than half an hour, more gods arrived. In the next 5 hours, more and more gods arrived one after another. Even the Son of Heaven of the true dragon arrived. "Sorry, we're late." Near noon, a figure walked in. Seeing the 4 of them enter, everyone in the sacred hall looked at them. "Ha, welcome the 4 true dragon sons of heaven from the sacred true dragon gathering. With you here, it'll be easy for us to kill the Dragon King this time." Yuan Kuei saw them walk over and a smile appeared in his eyes. Almost all the gods had come. As for the 1 or 2 that were missing, they didn't care if they came or not. It's easy to kill the Dragon King. I can kill him in 10 moves. However, I still have to hand over the crab under the Dragon King to you." The 4 true dragon sons of heaven swept their eyes over everyone in the room. Apart from the 4 of them, there were 7 gods from the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall, and 10 of them had joined in. Altogether, there were 21 gods. Compared to the previous powers of the sacred hall and the Lingxiao treasured palace, it was slightly less. However, when their gazes landed on the youth who was playing with the fire god pearl in the middle, they felt confident. To be able to kill 6 top-tier gods of the Dragon King in one move, his strength was enough to resist or even kill the crab. Apart from him, there was also Yuan Kuei. Top-tier strength was enough. Not to mention, including the 4 true dragon sons of heaven, there were a total of 6 true dragon sons of heaven. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you to join our Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall. Congratulations on making the right choice. I can say this. Even without you, with my strength, I can still destroy the Dragon King. Seeing everyone arrive, Kai Yong slowly stood up. At the same time, a terrifying pressure enveloped the entire room. At this moment, when all the gods felt Kai Yong's pressure, their expressions changed. 6 wisps of divine fire. No, it's higher than 6 wisps of divine fire. The middle-aged man with the golden saber on his back narrowed his eyes as he stared at Kai Yang in shock. "With your strength, you should be able to fight against a god with 7 wisps of divine fire, right?" A true dragon son of heaven felt his strength and revealed a solemn expression. This strength was indeed terrifying. Some of the people present who did not lose their strength were only SOSO. The Dragon King's strongest subordinate is that crab creature. We have fought with it before. The Scarlet Sun God can fight against ordinary 6 wisps of divine fire. Yuan Kuei's lips curled up slightly when he saw everyone's shocked expression as he said indifferently, I have the confidence to kill that ugly beast in 5 minutes at most. Scarlet Sun said with confidence. He, we believe in the strength of the Scarlet Sun god. The Dragon King has a total of 28 godly state experts. Even if we add in the 2 golden lions that he has just subdued, there are only 30 of them. Yesterday, we killed 6 of them. There are still 24 of them. In the 5 minutes that the Scarlet Sun god fought against the crab, we shouldn't have any problems fighting against the Dragon King and his group, right? Luke Owen's gaze swept across everyone around him as he said, I really didn't expect to gather 6 true Dragon Sons of Heaven today. After you killed the 6 subordinates of the Dragon King yesterday, I think that just the 6 of us will be able to suppress the rest of the Dragon King's subordinates. A true Dragon Son of Heaven indifferently swept his gaze over the 4 True Dragon Association members and the other True Dragon Son of Heaven, revealing a strong expression of confidence. This Dragon King is very annoying. He actually stupidly tried to recruit us as external members of the Dragon Palace. How pitiful, how laughable. A true Dragon Son of Heaven from the sacred True Dragon Gathering smiled. When do we act? Let's make a deal first. All the resources in the Dragon Palace belong to us. A god took out a long sword and lightly wiped it as he asked indifferently. Do it now. Don't worry, everyone. We only want the divine kingdom on this planet. The treasures in the Dragon Palace belong to you. The gods of the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall stood up one by one, their eyes flashing with cold killing intent. Haha, then let's go kill that arrogant Dragon King.